Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
Sam, Rhodey, and I landed on the grounds in front of the prison complex. As we walked into the courtyard, the Omnitrix beeped red, timing out and putting me back in human form. I grabbed my Model 3 rifle off my back, hefting it and making sure it was still in ISO mode. The place was littered with bullets, blood, and soldiers. I felt disturbed at how quickly I'd gotten used to scenes like it. Team B walked up to join us. Bobby and Hartley had removed their helmets and were standing side by side near the main entrance, while Bucky chose to keep his own helmet on, his head swiveling as he kept an eye out. Creel was in pale white form, looking as though he was made of cotton, his spider silk form, Darwin bark specifically. He glanced up at us from where he was sitting, giving me a nod that I returned. "What we got?" Sam asked, as soon as we were gathered. "The whole upper complex is a front," Bobby answered, "full of guards, but anyone in charge is most likely down below." "Want us to interrogate the guards left alive?" Bucky asked. Sam thought about that. "Do it. Creel, Hartley, Dial, you three go in. The rest of us will stay out here." Sam rubbed the back of his head. "Hey, Dial, I've watched horror movies too. There's no chance our comms will suddenly shut off, will they? You know, static and then we can't talk to each other." Everyone turned to look at me. I blinked. "Our comms are quantum. We can talk to each from across the universe, and there are more firewalls on our gear than the entirety of the world, all of it backed up by upgrade and jury-rig tech. Seriously, if Hydra had anything locked up down there that could get past all that, they'd already rule the world." They gave me a blank look. I don't think it was because they didn't understand. More likely, they wanted to make sure I wasn't claiming my ship was unsinkable. "No, we won't have a cliché comm cutoff," I said with a sigh. "One day, you need to show me whatever you guys are talking about," Bucky said with a sigh. "Okay, move out," Sam said. As I turned to leave, Rhodey tapped me on my shoulder. "Be careful, okay? We don't know what's in there." "Well, if they have anything genetically wrong with them..." I tapped the Omnitrix. Rhodey shook his head. "Don't make assumptions. Stay on your guard and watch out for those two." I looked over at Creel and Hartley, one a giant man now the same color as titanium, the other a woman in advanced plate armor with a broadsword. "I think they'll be fine," I said sarcastically. The War Machine's faceplate lifted up to show me Rhodey's face. He smirked. "Yeah, well, we all know you're the Hulk on our team, so..." I chuckled, walking away to join Creel and Hartley, while Bucky, Bobby, Rhodey, and Sam went to start their interrogation. I wished, for a moment, I had an alien that could help with that, something with telepathy or whatever. I chose to focus on what I could do, and raised my gun towards the one door leading in or out of the place. "Ready?" Creel reared a foot back and launched it forwards, giving the door in hard enough to send it flying, revealing the narrow concrete hallway beyond. "Ready?" Hartley and I shared a look as Creel went inside with the confidence of a man who can turn into metal. "You heard the man," Hartley said, her helmet snapping over her head. "We're ready." I grunted in agreement, and we followed the absorbing man underground. Going down the hall, we were suddenly enveloped in darkness, the red strobe of an emergency light barely illuminating things. "You know, for all the jokes about horror movies, I really expected this place to have better lighting," Hartley mused as we walked through the hallway. "Activate thermals," I answered.
"Yep," Hartley said.
"Should have got one of those helmets," Creel muttered. We came to an elevator with only one button. I hit the button, but nothing happened. Sharing a look, Creel grabbed the doors and shoved them open, revealing the dark shaft beyond. He leaped in, falling down for a few seconds. Soon a loud boom noise came from the bottom, along with the sounds of metal ripping and tearing. "All good," Creel yelled up the shaft. "Only about 200 feet. "Only, huh?" Hartley said. She leaped down, the lights on her armor glowing to illuminate her way. Once she was at the bottom, I jumped as well. My HUD let me see the bottom. I activated the jump jets before I hit the elevator. Creel had destroyed, slowing to a stop to land through the hole he'd created, and on the inside, Creel and Hartley stood outside the elevator, Hartley with her Model 3 out, Carl in his steel form. I stepped out as well and looked around the dark hallways. From the elevator, they went left, right, and forward. So, which way should we go? Creel asked. Split up? Hartley suggested. Not a chance. I put my gun on my back and reached for the Omnitrix. I won't be able to talk in this form, but I can sense whatever's down here. Follow my lead. I pressed down and felt my armor disappear in an instant, replaced by orange fur. My eyes sank away and I went down on all fours, fingers changing into claws that I clenched, slicing the concrete beneath me, and held back the urge to roar as I completed my transformation into wild mutt. Huh, Hartley said in a fascinated tone. He's a dog. I growled a bit, then took a whiff of the air. The left hallway smelt like death and decay most strongly. The right one smelled like steel and oil. But the one straight ahead smelled of people, of electricity, flesh, and food. I turned to Creel and Hartley and barked as quietly as I could, walking towards the middle hallway. They followed me as I prowled forward, sniffing at the air. While the hallways were no longer dark thanks to my enhanced senses, things now seemed like they were on fire to my vision. I followed the hallway, taking a deep whiff of the air. I salivated at the scent of fresh meat, unable to help myself. While I was still me, Wildmutt still felt hunger as something altogether more primal than I did. My claws scrabbled on the ground as I walked, Hartley and Creel behind me. We went for a long while, the scent getting stronger. Soon we came to a vault door. It went wall to wall, ceiling to floor, and looked as thick as they come. Well, that's foreboding, Hartley noted. What the hell do you think they have locked down there? Creel stepped forward and put a hand to the steel. Let's find out. His hand changed temperature in my senses to match that of the vault doors, then sank inside. He demonstrated this before, the ability to phase through the material he'd changed into. He rummaged around inside the vault's internal mechanisms for a bit. I growled in irritation as my enhanced hearing picked up the sounds of his metal fingers scratching and moving against the inside of the door, tiny screeching noises filling the air. Easy boy. Hartley scratched me at the nape of my neck, and I growled with reluctant pleasure at the feeling of her fingers running through my fur, even with the armor covering them. Almost done, big guy. Yep. Creel moved his hand out of the door and moved to the lever, twisting the large wheel in the center of the door, twisting it. After a bit, the door slid open. I felt myself salivate at the new sense that followed. Pain, fresh blood, and fear. The sense of prey, along with loud whines of animals. The door swung open, and the three of us walked into the place beyond. Cages. Cages all around us, arranged in rows, 5 high. They were as big as prison cells, with stairs and catwalks leading up to the top. We walked up to one of them and looked inside. A mass of flesh rested in the corner of the cage, about as big as my human self, with multiple human arms, legs, and eyes poking out of flesh, all different sizes. The eyes focused on us, and I growled in disgust. What the hell had Wydra done? God, Creel looked in another cage, Hartley and I moving over to it with him. It was a dog, but not like any dog I'd ever seen. Later, Hartley and Creel would tell me its skin was the shiny color of metal. The cage's metal, to be exact. To me, it was more like it was extremely hot. It moaned at us, clearly in pain from the metal. Concrete and plastic spikes poking from its body. He, based on the scent it was male, was connected to an IV that went up to a tube in the roof, the substance inside smelling like a slurry paste of food. It's like me, Creel said, horrified. Someone is going to pay for all this, Hartley growled. A sudden sound drew me attention. I snapped my head towards it, growling. A cage had been opened. Running footsteps ran from us, then another set of them came towards us. I barked, getting Hartley and Creel to turn as the creature released from the cage came around the corner. My barking set off others in the large warehouse, but I focused on the creature coming towards us. It came to a stop around the corner and stared at us, eyes enraged. It could have been a tiger. Once, the cat-like portions and the orange fur with black stripes screamed it. Now it was mutated. Front legs overly long, portions of its skull exposed, muscles grossly large. I roared at it and got a horrific scream in response. Then the poor animal began to grow even more grotesque as its body began to heat up. Hartley later told me that it had also changed color from orange to a far more unsettling shade. "Oh, crap," Hartley whispered, as it changed its fur to a familiar shade of green, its gamma enhanced. The tiger screamed, leaping towards me. I roared back, my anger and disgust towards Hydra focusing on the animal before me, and I leaped for it as well. The two of us clashed in midair, landing on the floor. Its claws went for my throat, but I ducked my head down and bit into its shoulder, hot blood filling my mouth. The tiger screamed, pushing me back and clawing my face, leaving 4 lines of white-hot pain across it. I roared in rage, digging my claws into the tiger. We rolled on the ground, slashing and biting each other. His right paw aimed, tried to swipe at me again, smashing a crater into the ground when I dodged. I roared and scratched at his chest, warm blood pouring over my front and back legs. He bit into my shoulder, teeth scratching at the Omnitrix and slicing into me. We rolled into a pillar and shattered it under our strength. Creel ran towards us, trying to help me. More sounds filled the air as cages were opened up all over the place. Something leaped over from another aisle and crashed into Creel. Something that had once been human, but was now covered fur, scales, and whose arms had been replaced by cybernetic ones. "Goddammit," Creel yelled, shifting into his polished vibranium form before bringing his legs up and kicking upwards, launching the creature back. The creature tried to attack again, only for an ISA round to slam into its head. The creature screamed but stayed standing. Hartley stepped forward, her Model 3 lifted high, and fired another ISA into the creature, hitting it twice more when it refused to go down. It finally fell. I was still fighting the Gamma Tiger. The thing was stronger than me, but in a weird way, it was like it was getting both weaker and stronger at random. 1 second I was fighting a weaker opponent, pushing it to the floor with a triumphant roar. The next it was picking me up and slamming me into a concrete wall. I roared in its face, ducking my head under a blow and uppercutting it with my claws. The Gamma Tiger went flying up, landing on top of the cages. I ran towards the cages and leaped up, clawing my way to the top. The Gamma Tiger rolled to its feet and screamed at me. I responded with a roar, snarling as we came closer and closer to each other. The tiger was healing, but slowly, the scent of its leaking blood giving me enough that I knew I could beat it. And God, I wanted to. I could feel the blood of the tiger soaked into my claws, my own wounds throbbing. The smell of it incensed me. There was this feeling of primal rage inside me, an anger I could barely contain. I roared, letting my anger be known, proclaiming my dominance. For a tense moment, a wild mutt and a Gamma Tiger face each other on top of cages, filled with roaring and screaming monsters. The tiger finally lost its patience and rushed me, its heat signature blazing in my sense. I jumped out of the way, grabbing one of the pipes that was on the ceiling and twirling around it to go back at the tiger, clawing it in the face hard enough to send it down to where Hartley and Creel were fighting. Several dogs that had been mutated into more hideous gamma creatures were attacking Creel, who tossed them aside for Hartley to take down with as many upgraded ISA bullets as she could, needing 3 at times for each one. One of the released dogs simply lay on the ground, its eyes staring out from a face that had been severely mutated, legs coming from a mass of flesh as it released muffled whines of pain. One of the dogs, something that must have once been a husky but was now a disgusting mismatch of gamma-enhanced muscles, spikes, and exposed bone, rushed me. I swiped a paw out, smacking the animal into the ground, spinning around to face the Gamma Tiger and running for it. Another dog was smacked aside. Then I leaped up as the tiger did. We smashed into each other and I held it down on the concrete as the creature roared in my face, its legs scratching at me and the floor. I bashed it in the face, cracking the concrete under its body. We rolled over once more before I smashed it back to the floor. I looked around for a moment before deciding to cut my losses. As best as I could, I spoke to the Omnitrix, snarling at it. "Understood," my voice came from the Omnitrix, with more of a monotone tinge to it. "Repairing genetic damage." A green beam slammed into the tiger I was holding down. It screamed, its voice high-pitched. As the Omnitrix did its work, The scream began to change, lowering and rising in pitch until it became the roar of a healthy tiger, the orange and black animal still struggling with me, but no longer with superhuman strength. Its fur and skin returned to normal. I threw the tiger aside, where Hartley shot it with an icer, sending it to blissful sleep, then snarled at the Omnitrix again. "Repairing genetic damage," my voice said. A green beam slammed into the dogs, then the human, then some of the beings in the cages. I struggled to stay up as my energy was drained, trying to keep the beam going. The screaming dogs began to calm, Creel holding one up for Hartley to knock out. I gasped, snarling in exhaustion, but I wasn't finished. I had to keep going. I snarled at the Omnitrix. More beams flew out, heading deeper into the area, flashes of light going along with it. More and more, leaving me stumbling in exhaustion, the sounds of people shouting in excitement, crying, dogs, cats, and other animals roaring and barking. My third form fell to the floor, and I struggled to rise up again. Warning, energy reserves depleted. Cycling to recharge mode. The Omnitrix symbol on my shoulder changed to red, and I fell to the floor in my human form again, my cheek pressing to the cool floor. The last thing I saw was Hartley and Creel rushing towards me as a dog excitedly barked in a cage nearby, freely changing its form to steel and back. "Well, that won't end well," I muttered before passing out. I woke up to feel someone shaking my shoulder. When I opened my eyes, Hartley was smiling. "Hey kid, how you feeling?" A groan slipped from lips, and I raised a hand to my head. Exhausted. I wanted to wait until this was over before I cured anyone. "It was a good call," Hartley answered, putting an arm under my shoulder to help me up. "Everyone stopped attacking us. You cured almost everyone." "Almost?" I looked around. Creel was letting people out of cages. They were naked, since Hydra apparently didn't care about the modesty of its failed experiments. Others, however, hadn't gotten off lucky. People with arms that had been replaced with those of animals, ranging from bears to stumpy gator claws, a woman with legs made from some sort of steampunk machinery, a man whose lips had been sewn together. Whatever had been done to them, it wasn't genetic. They looked at those who were cured with a strange combination of jealousy and happiness. "X," I said, pulling away from Hartley to stumble over to a computer monitor I could see at the very back of the room, sitting innocuously on a desk. "I'm going to link you to the nearest computer. Any signs of escape?" "Nothing so far, sir," X said. "I'm having satellites check the area for any suspicious activity as well. Whoever is in there hasn't left." "Good." I struggled into the chair in front of the computer and raised my hand up. Cuttons in my gauntlet shifted as I put my hand on the computer under the desk. They entered the computer, and the monitor began to flash with files. "Why couldn't we hack this before?" Hartley asked, walking up to join me. "Axe's tech is awesome," I admitted, "but it's not magical, not really. He can hack something as long as it's ever been connected to the internet or interacted with a device that has done the same, barring whatever Stearns is doing to protect Hydra. Nothing in this facility was ever linked up until now." "Correct, sir. I'm logged in, accessing files. Dial," Director Hill messaged me, sounding confused. "We just got a data drop from X. Is this from the facility you're in?"
Yep,
I replied. "We're going to need those reinformants. We have former prisoners in need of rescue. Well, and normal prisoners too, I guess," I said, remembering the guards. "Falcon, you reading?"
"Yeah, we got you."
"We're heading in too," Sam said. "One of the prisoners told us they have something deeper in. A monster they wanted to be able to fight the Hulk, but apparently they couldn't control it. If that's true, you'll need the backup. Something that could fight the Hulk." Creel walked up, looking at the prisoners. "And should we wait until people can come to help these guys?" I looked at the prisoners who were staring at us. A girl, couldn't be more than 5 years younger than me, was crying on the floor, clutching her legs as a man hugged her with similar tears in his own eyes. None of them approached us. I didn't know why, but maybe they just weren't sure what was happening. "I'll stay," Hartley said. "If there is something past here that can fight the Hulk, then you two are our best bet." "That's true," Creel patted me on the back, turning into his raw vibranium form so that he was now glowing blue. He looked around at the people who stared back at us, his fist clenched. We need to make them pay. We will. I got up and we started walking away. We'll see you soon, warrior. Take care, fellas. Hartley walked over to the people, speaking to them in soothing tones. Krill and I went into a hallway that led to the back. What is this thing? They're counter to the Hulk. Unknown? I blinked as files flew up into my HUD, X flashing through them. There is no name in the database for the being in question. However, some of its characteristics and capabilities have been named. It's 11 feet tall, covered in pale white fur with a grey underbelly. It's resistant to most forms of attack, but can also heal from damage, and it prefers to eat flesh. Human flesh. What in the hell? Creel growled. In the meantime, I'm feeling myself pale. No way Hydra had gotten their hands on that thing, let alone for any amount of time. Hey, I looked over at Creel, who seemed worried. You okay? That watch is still red. I looked at the Omnitrix. Yeah, I'm fine. It just took a lot of energy to cure all those people and animals. Until then, I grabbed my Model 3 off my back and mentally changed the ammo, a bright blue glow coming from it. I'm good. We came to another vault door. Enough of this, Creel said, pissed. Switching to his refined vibranium form, Creel reared back to punch it open, not going for subtle anymore. His first punch left a massive dent. The next two made the whole tunnel shake. The last sent the door flying inward. We stepped inside, me with my rifle up, Creel still in processed vibranium form, and found two bodies on the floor. I kneeled down next to one, looking it over. Big portions of the body had been torn away like something had eaten them. Bits of cloth from a lab coat told me he wasn't a prisoner, rather that he worked there. I held back my gag reflex at the horrendous sight of his skull wrapped in bits of meat, scratches from teeth etched into him. That thing is out there, I said, looking at Creel. Apparently it hates Hydra as much as we do, Creel said grimly. I looked at the Omnitrix, grunting at the still red light, then rose up to my feet. Sam, reinforcements come in? Army has vehicles to bring everyone in, Sam confirmed. Although you could have told us Creel broke the elevator, that's going to make things tough. Creel grunted in acknowledgement but said nothing. We'll be down soon, be careful. Right on cue, something could be heard down the hallway. I raised my gun as Creel moved in front of me. Nothing else happened. We shared a look, then moved forward. You know, Alien would have ended a lot faster if we'd been in it, I said softly as we walked through a dark hallway with creepy crying sounds behind us as water dripped around us. Well, yeah, Creel shrugged. Wait, can you turn into one of those things? What xenomorphs? I asked. Is that what they're called? Creel asked. Before I could answer, we came out into a large room filled with bookshelves, desks, and lab equipment. There was a massive cage in the center, one as big as a house, and made of some strange metal that had tons of scratches on the surface. There were chains hanging from the top of the cage, blood on the floor within the door hadn't been torn open, but left open. The place had been torn apart. Blood soaked the floor and walls, making me swallow a bit when I started salivating at the scent. Despite being human now, I was still feeling some of the primal pull being wild mutt in a room full of prey and fellow alpha predators. Why didn't Ben ever deal with that sort of thing? I pulled back and focused on where the blood was coming from, namely the bodies. I walked up to a soldier that was lying across one of the broken tables, his torso opened up and emptied of organs. He was one of many that had been torn apart and devoured, soldiers and scientists alike. Looks like we missed the party, Creel said easily. Think that thing is still hungry? I shuddered, looking over at him. How are you dealing with this? I've seen worse. Creel looked over to give me a dark smile. Seriously, where did it go? A noise came from among the bookshelves. I spun around, aiming my rifle. Don't shoot! A woman came out of the aisle, holding her hands up. Tears were pouring down her cheeks. Please, we need to get out of here. I stared at her, trying to decide if I should shoot her with an ISA or not. You're Hydra. She stared between us, still crying. Why? Yes. Please, I surrender. Just please, help me get out of here. Tease. They've gone crazy. Can't blame them, Creel said, striding forward. What was in the cage? She hiccuped when she tried to respond. I'm just a biologist. I'm pretty sure eating people is a part of biology. Creel picked up a random arm covered in desert camo gear and waved it at the woman, who stared at him in horror. Talk. Where is it? What is it? She hesitantly walked towards me rather than Creel, who tossed aside the bloody arm he was holding. It doesn't have an official name, but we call it the Wendigo, after a Native American legend with similarities to it. God fucking damn it, Marvel. Unable to see my frustration through my helmet, she walked up to a computer and reached for the keyboard. I waved at it before she could do something, bringing up the files on Wendigo. She gave me a startled look, then returned to the files. Still nervous. We put a tracker in it. The others were going to unleash it to try and kill you. When we tried to stop them, they locked us in here and She rubbed at her face, choking back a sob. I hid. Here it's... Oh God. The monster is still in the room, I said, looking around the room. Raising my rifle, I stared around, turning on one of my vision modes. Based on the backscatter eyes Fitzsimmons had studied, it gave me an X-ray vision of the room. With everything in that weird blue light that the vision gave me, I spun around, looking everywhere. It was a little disorientating. I looked at the back of the room, thinking, okay, where does no one ever look? Oh, right. I craned my head up. Creel and the woman did the same. The snarling figure hanging on the ceiling above stared back at me, looking eerie in my X-ray vision. Clever girl, Creel said softly. The creature leaped towards me, and I reflexively fired my rifle. Phew! A repulsor blast erupted from my rifle, hitting the Wendigo in the chest as it dropped towards me, and the woman, it was knocked off balance, slamming into the cage instead. It rolled to its feet and faced us, rising up to stand and face us. It was huge, even larger than I expected. I thought this thing was 11 feet tall, Creel said, raising his hands up. That's a lot bigger than 11. It grows as it eats, the woman screamed. Of course it does. I looked at the Omnitrix, which was still red, then back at the monster. The monster was dripping with blood from spikes stabbed across its back and front, each one with a chain hanging from it that corresponded with the chains in the cage below it. It pulled one out of where its left nipple should have been, letting out a sound as its blood poured across its front. The spike was at least a foot long. The Wendigo tossed that spike aside as his wound quickly healed, and reached for a spike on its shoulder, tugging at it, but not pulling it out as he let out sounds. It took me a moment to realize he was laughing as he caused himself pain. Great, it's a freaky masochist, I growled. I had an ex like that, Creel replied. Oh God, the woman shrieked, turning and running. I swear, the Wendigo smiled at the sight of the woman sprinting for the exit. Its teeth flashing, it leaped off the cage, blood still dripping from its claws and around the spikes in its flesh. I shot it in the chest, diverting it in mid-air. When it landed, it rolled. Wendigo! It cried, rushing after the screaming woman with sadistic glee. It smashed through a desk, trying to run past me. I snapped a hand up, catons flowing, and ran forward while activating my jump jets. The catons formed into my tower shield in mid-flight, and I slammed into the Wendigo shield first, sending it to crash into some bookshelves. Run, I told the woman as wood and papers flew everywhere, pieces of glass shattering along with them. Wendigo? The monster snarled, rising to glare at me. Looks like he wants an ass-whopping, Creel said, standing next to me. Hell, I'm ready to oblige, I growled, raising my rifle in one hand and my shield in the other. Come on, asshole. Let's go. Wendigo rushed us with a cackling laugh as my rifle roared and Creel stepped forward with raised fists. Isabel Hartley, warrior. What's your name? Isabel asked one of the former prisoners, a young girl with red hair and brown eyes who hadn't been given clothes. She was kneeling next to her inside the girl's cage, trying to be gentle with her. Katie, the girl said. Katie Whitley. Katie, Isabel smiled, putting a hand on the girl's shoulder. Listen, you're safe. I'm not with Hydra. Why? Your shield? The girl asked. When Isabel nodded, the girl retreated inwards. They said they were S.H.I.E.L.D. too. They said they'd give me money, that I wouldn't have to work as a hooker. Katie began to cry. I didn't. They did things to me, said I could be like Captain America. Isabel barely kept herself from cursing. From the first moment she discovered her own crewmates were Hydra, she had hated the organization. But this, taking people off the streets, promising them a new life, then tearing them apart, the worst was some of the prisoners who had been abused in all connotations of the word by soldiers and scientists. Needlessly torn in to see where the experiments went wrong. It was beyond well, I'm not Hydra, and really, S.H.I.E.L.D. has become something new. Isabel gently squeezed the girl's shoulder. That's why I'm here. We're taking the fight to Hydra, and we're going to stop them all. Kill them when we can. Katie looked up at Isabel, tears still running down her cheeks. Isabel nodded at the girl, rising to her feet and looking her over. Katie was healthy. Extremely healthy, with the muscles of a person who'd worked out their entire life. If they'd been trying to make her into Captain America, Isabel turned around, whispering, X, can you give me the files on Katie Whitley? Of course, X said, coming your way. Isabel raised her hand, watching as cartons rose up from her gauntlet in the form of a computer screen, the screen glowing as soon as it was formed. Isabel tapped on the new file and stared at the screen, looking back at Katie. The present Katie was striking, with red hair, a button nose, and a slightly large chin along with a powerful build. The past Katie in the file was skinny, her hair a sickly brown color, with a face torn open from sores and portions of her skull and teeth exposed, a cleft lip, and limbs of different lengths. Isabel stepped out of Katie's cage and looked around. Among the prisoners, there were 3 types that she could see. The first made her itch to stab a Hydra soldier in the face for all the horrors those monsters did. Those were the people DL hadn't been able to change. Some were still in their cages, unable to move because of various body parts removed or added. Some had limbs haphazardly replaced with animal limbs, while others now had robotic pieces of varying technological eras in their bodies. When Isabel walked up to them, they shied away from her, staring with fear that made her heart clench. The second group was normal in every way. They seemed to be the happiest, crying with joy as they hugged others. Isabel flipped through the files and found the image of one, an older man with thinning grey hair. He'd once been covered in green skin, with muscles so grossly large he couldn't move. Now he was hugging one of the people in the first group, tears in his eyes, as the person he was hugging, a young girl with a left arm made of some plastic substance, cried with him. The third group was intermingled with the others, but was also very obvious in the differences. They were people with powers. Some had incredible physiques, like Katie did, looking like Olympic athletes. Others, on the other hand, were able to change their bodies into various materials. Not like Creel, only a single one each, but they could do it, and that was only the obvious examples. Hartley sighed, looking around and rubbing her forehead. Hill isn't going to like this. She looked over at where the animals were contained. A large rhino looked back at her with bleary-looking eyes. A dog barked happily, fur the color of steel. In the back she could see a monkey leaping around its cage at incredible speeds. Just then, the doors to the room opened, Hartley spinning to point her gun. Sam held his hands up as he walked in, his helmet collapsing to reveal his face. Hartley lowered her gun, smiling. Hey, Sam said, walking in and looking around with interest, the animals barking, the crying people, and the blood on the floor. What the hell is this? Hydra, Bucky said, striding in after Sam. Unlike Falcon, Bucky chose not to collapse his helmet, simply looking around with his gun held carefully. Bobby and Rhodey walked in next, the tall woman and imposing man in black and silver armor side by side. Bobby moved over to Isabel, smiling. You look dissatisfied. Haven't been able to actually fight Hydra in a bit, Isabel admitted. She looked around. Doesn't help. I have a lot more reasons to do it now. Bobby bit her lip, looking around as well. Yeah, you do. Mockingbird Warrior, Sam said, waving them over. The pair went to join Sam, Rhodey, and Bucky. There were 2 other hallways, Sam said, crossing his arms. We need to check them. War Machine, Nomad, Mockingbird, you go do that. Warrior and I will stay here and watch these people. Keep them calm until the army can get here. You got it, Falcon, Rhodey said with a nod. Bucky hefted his gun with a nod of his own. Bobby grinned at Isabel, who gave her a disgruntled sigh before patting her on the shoulder. The two groups split up, Sam walking towards the people who'd been imprisoned. Everyone, my name is Sam Wilson, he said, heartily at his shoulder. I'm with an organization called Bridge. We're here to help you get home, or at the least to somewhere safe. Now what I need, Colonel James Rhodey Rhodes, War Machine. Rhodey looked back at Sam as he and Hartley spoke to the prisoners. He turned to Bucky and Bobby as the three of them went back into the hallways. Every time I think this is the worst a person can do. You've only scratched the surface, Bucky said darkly. This was pretty bad, though. You think they'll be okay? Bobby asked, twirling her batons as she walked. No, Rhodey sighed, his suit's speakers making it a bit loud. I don't. They'll be okay for a long time. Even if they're cured, Bucky added. Trust me, Hydra sticks with you. They came to a stop at the two hallways. So Bobby said, Which way do we go? The three soldiers looked left, then right. Rhodey activated his suit's sensors and stepped forward. I'm going to say, this way. He pointed at the one that was right from the elevator. My suit can sense some power being distributed that way. Might have something interesting. Got it. Bucky walked into that hallway, Bobby and Rhodey hurrying to catch up. They walked in silence for a little while. So, Bucky said nervously, sounding like he was trying to be friendly, but was out of practice at it. Have you guys seen Frankenstein? Bobby gave Rhodey a glance. He smiled under his helmet. I have, during an old movie night with my ex-husband. I thought it was really good. Bucky's shoulders seemed to relax slightly. I watched it with Steve. It wasn't bad. I mean, I never had much time for movies back then, but it was still fun. Yeah, well, just wait until you see the new stuff they've done with movies, Rhodey said. We can play catch-up. The former Winter Soldier nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. They came to a vault door. Rhodey grabbed it. You guys will want to step back. Once Bobby and Bucky were out of the way, he pulled with the full of his suit's strength. The door fought him for a moment. Then the steel crumbled. Rhodey ripped the door open, tossing it aside with careless ease. Huh, Bobby noted the door. Guess you can add bank robbing as a possible profession, huh? I'll update my resume. Rhodey said, walking into the open door and looking around as Bucky and Bobby joined him. The room beyond was a warehouse, with boxes and shelves everywhere. The centerpiece of the room was a series of work tables with machines and robotic pieces on them, several of which were extremely familiar to Rhodey. Oh, what the hell is this? Rhodey mumbled, walking around the center table. S.H.I.E.L.D. said they destroyed these. Yeah, we had a habit of saying that, Bobby noted with a sigh. So these are the drones that Ivan Vanko made. Rhodey flipped up his faceplate, looking down at one of the half-built robots. The robot was welded in random ways, with bits of other metal attached to it at haphazard angles where portions had been blown up. A series of pictures lay on the table showing drones at the Stark Expo, shooting at people and running around the park. Rhodey lifted up one of the pictures and compared it to the robot in question. I think this was one of the Navy drones. Hammer wanted them to be themed. Bucky poked at one of the robot's arms with his gun, grunting, These dangerous. They shouldn't be, Rhodey pointed at the chest of the robot, where a plug was connected to the machine, the cable leading down to the floor. Looks like they couldn't power them up. Tony's arc reactors are pretty much essential to make these things work. And he isn't exactly the sort to share that tech, Bobby noted, coming over with a file. Looks like they were trying to put them together with Chitauri pieces. Seriously, how many Chitauri came through that portal? She asked, flipping through the file in her hands. Hell if I know, Rhodey said. Tony didn't invite me to that me. The drone suddenly reached its arm shakily to aim at Rhodey, the robot sparking across its form. Whoa! Rhodey yelled, backing away. He raised his gauntlets up. Bucky aimed at the drone while Bobby spun her handgun into her hand. The drone reached out. All three soldiers started shooting, For about a minute, all that could be heard in the room was the sound of bullets slamming into steel, tearing it apart. The drone shook and danced beneath the impact before letting out a final screech of noise as it finally turned into its component parts. They stopped shooting, staring at it. "What the hell was that?" Bucky asked angrily. "I thought you said it couldn't power up." "It couldn't," Rhodey said in response, his faceplate still up so they could see the confusion on his face. "Did you see that thing? It was slow as hell. I mean, they weren't exactly fast-tracked before, but they were a lot quicker." "X," Bobby said, "can you tell us what is going on with these drones?" "One moment, they are all beginning to activate on limited power. They are attempting to complete a secondary objective." All around the room, boxes began to shake as the three soldiers went back to back with each other. "Kill the allies of Anthony Stark. I'll attempt to disable them." Meantime, Bucky raised his gun and aimed around the room. "I suggest you go for a more manual route in doing the same." Bobby, Bucky, and Rhodey shared a look. Bobby's helmet rose to surround her face, Rhodey's faceplate slammed down, and all three raised their weapons up. The boxes in the room exploded open, drones struggling to rise out of them like robotic zombies as the three started shooting. "Izzy's going to be pissed she missed this," Bobby said gleefully. Referring to Hartley. "Take out their chests," Rhodey shouted, focusing fire on a shaking box and leaving it torn to pieces. A drone without legs struggled to fly at him, its palms glowing with Chitauri energy. Rhodey grabbed it out of the air and threw it down, crushing it beneath his feet. "Got it," Bucky said, firing one bullet at a time, hitting drones in the center of their chest with ease. When one made a desperate attempt to get close, he snapped his robotic fist into the head of the offending robot, some combination of steampunk technology and Ivan Vanko's technology. Bucky's arm tore the head off the robot, followed by him kicking it aside for Rhodey's minigun to destroy it. Bobby waded into the drones, her batons lashing out as several of the drones came to their feet to fight. "Do these count as zombies?" she asked casually, slamming an electrified baton into one of the drone's chests. The drone let out a whining sound, swinging a fist out at her. She ducked and flicked her other baton, a long blade coming out of the baton's end. She came and stabbed the drone in the chest. As it fell, one of the drones raised a hand and fired a beam of purple at the mockingbird. She let it. The purple energy slammed into blue energy shields, stopping short of actually hurting her. She stabbed that drone, spun away from another one, and kicked it in the chest. Suddenly, in the back of the room, something exploded through a wall, stepping forward. Rhodey sparred it a glance, only to blink. "Oh, come on." The being that came out looked like a mismatch of three robots, and Rhodey knew them all. The chest was made from one of Tony's suits, the pieces of one that Rhodey had seen propping up a crane during the fight against Killian and AIM, with some strange brown metal reinforcing and a strange form of purple flesh beneath. The legs and right arm were from Ivan Vanko's personal suit, hastily welded together with other pieces. The left arm and head, however, were far older. The Ironmonger suit's helmet turned to look at them, pieces of purple flesh around a drone's head barely visible as it hesitantly struggled forward, staggering towards them with a slow and deliberate pace. The whip on the right arm was sparking, unable to turn on, but trying. The left arm's repulsor attempted to activate, but failed. Despite that, the enormous being stepped forward, eyes glowing with a low light. "Izzy is really going to be jealous," Bobby noted. I leaped up in the air over the Wendigo's charge, shooting it with my repulsor gun, with beam after beam, scoring across its fur. It laughed, seeming reveling in the pain as it slammed into Creel. Creel took the charge with a bit of struggle, digging his heels into the ground as he flashed into a bluish-white and shiny metal. I recognized as osmium. A paper grocery bag of osmium would weigh as much as a car. Creel was a lot heavier than that. He came to stop very quickly. The Wendigo reared back, swinging a claw at him, and Creel flashed into his vibranium form, the claws bouncing against Creel's body. I landed on a bookshelf and kept shooting at the Wendigo's back, breathing and relaxing with every shot, though it was easy to hit such a big target. Portions of the Wendigo were sliced off with each shot, only for it to heal back instantly, leaving me growling in anger. "It's just healing back." "Not for long," Creel punched the Wendigo in the face, shattering its teeth and sending it back. "Wendigo!" the monster giggled, only to gasp when Creel stepped forward and uppercut it in the stomach with a left, following with a right cross to the creature's face. The creature moved with sudden speed and wrapped a claw around Creel, spinning and tossing him aside. "Shit," Creel shouted, getting sent flying through the air like a cannonball, tearing through several tables and bookshelves, tumbling through the air. The Wendigo turned to smile at me. "Wendigo," I glared, not willing to let this thing scare me, and shot it in the chest from my spot on top of the bookshelves. A shot in the chest did nothing but nudge the creature a bit while leaving a quickly healing wound. It smiled even wider, fangs flashing, then slowly walking towards me. It didn't move with the same speed as before, clearly wanting to enjoy this. I rolled my eyes, going for bravado even as tension made my voice a little squeaky. "You really think I'm scared of you? Black Widow is scarier. Seriously, way scarier." The Wendigo kept walking towards me as I shot it, barely moving as repulsor beams sliced off pieces of its body. I checked the Omnitrix, still a solid red. "Fine," I said, glaring at my superpowered watch as it seemed to mock me with its red color. "I'll do it myself." The Wendigo swiped at me. I jumped over it with a yell that was part fear and part anger, flipping in the air and putting my rifle away to grab the Model 3. The handle attached to my wrist in mid-air, then snapped a blade outwards and around my wrist, becoming a sword. My other hand brought forth my shield in a smaller and more manageable form as I landed behind to Wendigo, staring up at it with a glare from beneath my helmet. "Come on then, asshole," I yelled, trying to psych myself up to fight something twice my height. The Wendigo spun and slashed at me with blinding speed. I barely blocked the attack on my shield and was sent flying across the floor with my feet skittering on the pavement until I hit a desk, shattering it. Still standing with my shield raised, I ducked under a blow from the Wendigo and slashed at its stomach with all of my suit's speed, cutting a deep line into its grey underbelly that began to heal immediately. The Wendigo snarled, raising a fist up and swinging it down at me like a hammer. I spun away from the blow and swung my sword into that arm, slicing it off. As the arm went flying in a spray of red that soaked my blade in the Wendigo's fur, the creature screamed. "Wendigo!" Howling in pain, it unleashed a blind swipe that sent me flying. I flipped through the air uncontrollably, my force field barely holding after a Hulk-level attack, then lost my shields completely when I slammed into the stone ceiling above with a cratering smash. "Ah!" I yelled. Groaning in pain, I stared down at the Wendigo, who was glaring up at me while his arms slowly grew back. Because, of course, his arms could grow back. Oh, and it was licking at the blood pouring out of its still leaking arm because it was a freak. My HUD sent me damage reports showing that several dozens of the catoms in my armor had been obliterated, but I could still fight. Growling, I pressed my feet against the ceiling as I began to fall and pushed off towards the Wendigo, activating my jump jets to give me a boost. The Wendigo jumped up towards me. I hit him sword first, slamming into his chest. It roared, spinning in the air to hold me close. We hit the ground hard, the Wendigo still impaled on my sword, but also on top of me. He pressed into me, clawing at my shield as I held it up, depleting my force fields and clawing at me. "You smell like shit," I yelled up at the musty creature. "Wendigo!" It leaned down and tried to take a bit out of my face, teeth scratching at my helmet. The movement of its jaws made my neck muscles hurt as it pulled at my head. "Ugh!" I screamed in pain and fear, struggling with it, kicking at his thighs. I was breathing fast, my HUD sending me flashing alarms about the damage I was taking, while my heartbeat skyrocketed with fear and adrenaline. "Get off of me!" I let go of my shield, grabbed my handgun from my thigh holster, and pressed the gun to the creature's head, firing bullets at point-blank range into his face, my helmet muffling the sound as the bullets hit the Wendigo. While the bullets bounced off his head, the Wendigo released my helmet from my jaws and rose off me with a whine of pain. My sword was pulled out of his chest with a schlick sound. I rose up and kept shooting my handgun, putting it away once I was on my feet. I was panting hard as I rubbed at my helmet, wiping away his saliva. You bastard. He smiled sadistically, scratching his claws at the floor. Then Creel came in with a haymaker that sent the Wendigo back. I fell to a knee, trying to catch my breath. The hell took you so long? Seriously, thank God my armor was so good, I could still fight, and the catoms were functioning, but fighting a Hulk-strong monster is always a damn grating prospect. He threw me into another room, Creel grumbled, stepping forward. Why didn't you change into the tiger or something? Because the Omnitrix is still... I was cut off when it turned green mid-sentence. Oh, you did that on purpose, I grumbled at the Omnitrix, opening it up as Creel hit the Wendigo with another punch. Then I found myself blinking at the hologram that popped up, flipping through the menu to confirm what I was seeing. When did I get these two? Hey! Creel yelled, getting lifted and thrown. I discarded the thought, flipping to one of the aliens. Guess this guy's in theme, I mumbled, pressing down on the Omnitrix. It's hero time. Electricity surrounded my form, my muscles grew outwards, exploding. Growths similar to stitches appeared across my biceps, stomach, face, and back. Two large Tesla coil-shaped pillars of organic metal grew from my shoulder blades, pointing straight up, while another two grew out my lower back, pointing at the floor as three smaller discs showed up on my stomach. My hair was still in a ponytail, but it had gotten longer, while my beard had gotten shorter. My skin changed to green as I rose to my full height, and I grinned. Frankenstrike. Green lightning fell from nowhere to hit the metal pillars on my body, sending a surge of power into my muscles and bones. I grinned, my green eyes flashing with lightning as I met eyes with the Wendigo, while a surprised Creel looked on. When I spoke, it was in a voice tinged with lightning, reverberating from vocal cords that would have been considered damaged by human standards. You know what they say about he who fights monsters? I raised a hand filled with electricity. They become them. Green lighting flew from my hand to slam into the Wendigo, sending it back to hit the concrete walls behind it. Hey, Creel? I asked, walking up to him while electricity danced around my form. Want to try something cool? Still confused, he nodded. The Wendigo, snarling with rage, struggled to rise, only to blink when he saw us. Creel was grimacing in pain from where he was floating in a bubble of lightning, but still managed to smirk in his metal form. I held him aloft on magnetic and electric power over my head, power flowing from the four metal Tesla-type coil things on my back to hold Creel up. Green bolts surrounded us like a forest, and one crashed down in front of us. Might as well say it, I said with a grin, raising my arms over my head as Creel curled into a ball. Fastball. I threw my arms down to thrust them towards the Wendigo, launching Creel forward. Electricity flowed through me, gathering in my hands as I lowered my hands into a classic Kamehameha pose. Railgun. Creel, held in a wave of electromagnetic power, disappeared in a blur. In science, electromagnetic weapons could launch metallic objects at speeds of up to Mach 8. With ease. Creel was too heavy for me to be able to do that without some prep time. Kaboom! That said, the sonic boom that sent me stumbling back was gratifying, but not as much as Creel embedded deep in the Wendigo's chest, blood pouring around his fists as they flew into a concrete wall and disappeared past it into another room, sending concrete dust everywhere. The force of the sonic boom destroyed even more tables and desks around us, sending wood, metal, plastic, paper, and glass flying in a circle away from all three of us. I rushed after them and found they'd landed in a room full of old laboratory equipment. The Wendigo was rising up, 3 deep holes in its body that were healing more slowly than they had before. Yeah, I said with a grin at the beast of sorcery. Screw magic. Give me science any day. When Diaf, Creel punched the Wendigo in the face, sending it back. Creel unleashed a series of quick and powerful blows, driving the creature back with sheer boxing technique alone. When the Wendigo swiped at him, Creel was forced to back off. Then I blasted it with electricity. The spikes in its body gave me a perfect target, allowing me to attack it with all the lightning I had. I laughed as pure power filled my veins before flowing out and electrocuting my opponent. I let up to allow Creel to get some hits in, then blasted the Wendigo again. It's alive, I cried out, laughing in a voice of lightning and damaged vocal cords. It's alive! Ha ha ha! Yeah, I've seen way too many movies. On the plus side, Bucky was going to love this. The Wendigo roared, falling down to its knees and glaring at us despite the hundreds of thousands of volts burning its fur off, charring its flesh and leaving a smell in the air of burnt fur, ozone and grilled meat. The creature roared once more, the sound somehow twisting like a scream, and scratched at the floor, trying to reach us. Portions of its face burned away, revealing a blackened skull, only to heal back again. I stopped the electricity, and Creel stepped forward once more. He didn't let up this time. He gave the Wendigo a left, a right, then kicking it in the chest hard. The Wendigo fell on the floor. Creel and I stared at its silent form. Then, slowly, it struggled up again. "Oh, come on," Creel yelled, annoyed. Seriously, if it wasn't for my advanced equipment, the Omnitrix and Creel's powers, the Wendigo would have torn us apart with us being unable to touch it, and healing from anything that could injure it. As it was, we had one problem. What do we need to do to actually take this thing down without killing him? I thought for a moment, staring at the large and furry bastard. The Wendigo was a monster, and I could tear it apart with Creel's help, but not without killing it. According to what little I knew about the Wendigo curse, it was also an innocent person, unable to fight against the things forcing it to attack. This wasn't the human's fault, all of this death. I wasn't willing to kill someone for the monster they'd been forced to turn into. Be a bit hypocritical of me. Then I came to a realization. Creel lead it out here. I turned and ran out of the hole Creel and Wendigo had created. How the hell am I supposed to? Hell with it. Creel ran after me. "Come on, follow me, you B-movie reject." The Wendigo roared weakly, moving with less speed, but still chasing us. It giggled, spasming from the electric shock still running through it. Even then, I could still see the burns on its body were healing, and much more slowly than the other wounds had. I entertained the idea of simply burning it, either with electricity or by turning into swamp fire, but the goal wasn't to kill it. Waiting across it, Creel and I stood, both of us knowing the plan as we lingered near its former cage. "Come on," Creel roared, clapping hands of steel together. "Come on, Wendigo," the monster cried in challenge, running towards us with the same surprising speed as before, its eye glowing with rage. Creel stepped forward, grunting as he turned into osmium to take the charge. I stepped forward and raised a massive fist enveloped in lightning, punching the Wendigo in the face. The giant creature stood up and swung its right claw, cutting into my chest and throwing me back. Creel kicked the Wendigo's leg, forcing it to kneel, only to get picked up. I wasn't sure how much Creel weighed in his osmium form, besides a shit ton, but the Wendigo still lifted him and threw him at me. I leaped over the form of my friend as he crushed the steel cage's bars. With a bit of concentration, my feet were magnetized to the side of the cage, allowing me to stand against the side of the bars like Spider-Man. The Wendigo stepped forward, clawing at me, but I leaped over his arm and punched him with an electro fist again, giving him a cross, then an uppercut before grunting when the Wendigo hit me back, sending me back into the cage. The Wendigo came closer, close enough that he couldn't run or escape. I pushed my power into the cage, bending the bars with a crunch of steel and a buzz of electricity. The bars bent to my will as the Wendigo rushed us. Then Creel stepped past its swinging claws and grabbed the furred killer's waist. "Rag!" Creel twisted his waist, throwing the Wendigo into the hole I'd bent into the cage. As the Wendigo fell into the cage, I roared, "Rag!" The cage's bars bent back into position. The Wendigo, seeing it was back in its cage, panicked, rushing towards the still-open door. Creel walked around the cage as I stood on the top, watching the Wendigo desperately fit its head through the door and nothing else. It scratched at the bars. "Wendigo! Wendigo!" he screamed, shoulders pressing up against the door. "You've put on some weight," Creel noted. "Bit bigger than the last time you were in there. That's the problem with overeating. Can't move as well as you used to." With that, Creel transformed into a dark-colored metal and punched the Wendigo hard, forcing it back. I tapped the Omnitrix symbol on my chest. Diamond head. Now that the Wendigo couldn't simply leap away, I fired my crystals like bullets around the perimeter of the cage. They stabbed into the concrete and began to grow. The Wendigo, watching as crystals began to surround it, panicked, trying to jump away, only to bounce off the walls of the cage. I stumbled slightly, but kept my focus. Wendigo, with that final howl, the cage was surrounded in solid crystals, trapped once and for all. I kept them going, digging under the cage until a large cube of blue-green surrounded it. The Wendigo could still be heard somewhat on the inside, desperately trying to break through its new crystal cage with no success. Once done, Creel tapped the crystal. "Nice. Diamond head construction for all your indestructible building needs," I quipped, dropping to the floor next to Creel. "Maybe you should open with that next time," Creel asked, as I stood next to him. "Did you see how fast that thing was?" I asked. "I had to contain it somehow. Besides, Frankenstrike did damn well." Creel nodded, though he did give me an odd look. "So, there are aliens that look like Frankenstein." "There are aliens that look like a lot of things," I answered simply. "We'd be here all day if I named all of them." Isabel Hartley, warrior. Isabel watched as the army roamed around, carrying blankets and helping people. It was only a few of them, those who had been on their way from the moment they'd attacked, and only enough to make sure things were clear. More people would be on their way soon, as well as medical and psychological help. A general, an older white man with dark blonde hair and brown eyes, walked up to her and Sam. "How the hell did you find these freaks?" the general asked bluntly. Isabel decided she didn't like him. "Sir," Sam said calmly, eyes narrowed, "these people were imprisoned, tortured, and have been the subject of gruesome and illegal experimentation that had them in much worse states before you got here. They are not freaks, they are victims." The general stared at Sam before grimacing. "Fine, but how did you find this place anyway?" "Classified, General," Sam said, placing his hands behind his back. "We appreciate the assistance, and Bridge is sending people to aid in the transition. Please tell your people to treat everyone kindly, and keep them from engaging with them until they can speak with therapists and Bridge personnel." The general growled, apparently angered at being dismissed, before turning to walk away briskly. Sam sagged slightly once the general left, leaning in towards Isabel. "I'm really not cut out for this." "You're doing fine." Isabel grinned, her helmet down so Sam could see it. "What, not having fun being Captain America's protégé?" "Less protégé, more punching bag," Sam said, looking around. "We need to keep an eye out on these people, I think." "Falcon," the comm said. "It's Mockingbird. Can you send Warrior? We're in the right hallway from the elevator." Sam blinked. "Yeah, you need more reinforcements." Well, the sound of gunfire could be heard. "Just Izzy is fine. The boys are fighting the big one." Giving Isabel a look of confusion that she returned, Sam gestured for her to go. "She's on her way." Isabel ran out of the door, ducking around some of the still arriving army personnel and activating her helmet. She moved as quickly as her superhuman armor and the tight hallway allowed, going into the indicated hallway and sprinting full speed. As she heard bullets and explosions ahead of her, Isabel reached for her Model 3, a short blade popping out of the handle. She noted the destroyed vault door on the floor, running over it and entering the room beyond, stopping only for a moment to stare. "Robots," Isabel blinked. "Mac would hate this." Then she was ducking a slow punch at her head. Isabel stabbed outward with her sword, slicing deep into the attacking drone's heart, then blocking another drone's punch with her arm. She pulled her knife out of the first drone's chest to stab the other in the head, sighing in satisfaction at finally fighting someone again. "Hey!" Bobby shouted. "Help, Rhodey!" Isabel looked at Bobby, who was shooting drones with her Model 2, which was shaped like a small submachine gun, next to Bucky, who was firing on something across the room. Isabel gaped at it when she realized what it was. A giant, tall machine was wrestling with War Machine, trying to fight the more advanced robot. Rhodey lifted the massive robot and tossed it back, shooting it once he had some room, but only putting holes in the Frankenstein-like combination of different robots. Isabel sprinted forward, her Model 3 becoming a broadsword, and blocked the right arm, noting the sparking whip dangling from the forearm before she raised her broadsword and hacked down into it, slicing deep into metal and purple flesh. The robot reached its other hand to attack her when War Machine stepped in, flicking his hand. A long blade made of catoms formed from the left arm bracer of War Machine. Rhodey blocked the left arm of the giant machine and punched his blade into his opponent's chest. The left arm sparked, trying to activate repulsors, but not having the power to. Isabel raised her sword once more and swung, removing the right arm of the robot. A drone tried to attack her, but she kicked it back and decapitated it, grinning wildly. "Oh, this is just too fun." "Focus," Bucky said, ripping the arm off a drone and firing automatic fire into the chest of another one. Bobby flipped over the attack of another robot, this one with pale green across the metal of its body, and fired her submachine gun into it before stabbing it in the chest with her baton. Back with the massive robot, Rhodey pulled his sword out of its chest before swiping upwards, his sword slicing through metal and flesh to remove the other arm. Isabel sliced at the machine waist, grunting when she stopped halfway. She yelled out, pushing once more, and tore out the other side in a spray of green and purple blood and black oil that sprayed across the pair. The machine toppled over, legs kicking. Rhodey was sent back a step by one of the kicks, grunting at the impact. He raised his gauntlet, the sword poking out of it, shining. Suddenly all of the robots were falling to the ground, lights going out across the room. "Drones disabled," X said over the comms. "Thank you for your patience. Ivan Vanko had quite an interesting security system in place." Isabel growled, kicking at the giant robot. "Damn it, couldn't you have taken a bit longer?" Isabel joked. "That would have been inefficient. Plus, I pride myself on being good at this," X said. Isabel sighed, swinging her sword to decapitate the now dead robot. "At least I got some kind of fight." A group of Hydra scientists and soldiers ran through their hallways, trying to escape as the sounds of the Wendigo battling their enemies echoed, running faster when the sounds stopped. "You think they killed it?" a soldier whispered. "Like hell," another soldier whispered. "It must have killed them. We need to get out of here." "The exit's not far," one of the scientists whispered hastily. A blue blur sped into the hallway. "Content." The soldier who had been yelling was punched by a tall man with silver skin. In a few moments, the scientists were knocked out, leaving Fast Track and Creel standing over them. Like that, it was over. "Sounds like you guys had an eventful mission," Sky said later that night after everyone had been round up. "It was just the two of us in the lounge of Avengers Tower at the bar, me with a milkshake and her with some alcohol as we leaned against the bar together. I was wearing some clothes Pepper and Tony had loaned me, which meant a red shirt with an Iron Man helmet in gold in the center, and some designer blue jeans that had to be worth more than a month's salary when I was doing construction. Sky wore a brown button-up shirt and a pair of denim short shorts, and was giving me a smirk. "It really was," I rubbed at my forehead, leaning over the bar. Seriously, the other groups didn't have to fight anything at all besides Hydra soldiers. Meanwhile, our team fought Gamma Tigers, zombie robots, and a goddamn Wendigo. "At least you saved a lot of people," Sky said, leaning in towards me. Yeah, we did." I smiled a bit. "Bridges taking them in to look them over, test them, figure out who has powers, who has family waiting for them, help the ones who the Omnitrix couldn't fix, all that stuff. I'm keeping an eye on them, though. Or X is keeping an eye on them. Jarvis, too." "You don't trust Bridge?" Sky asked, taking a sip of whatever she'd chosen while resting her head in her hands. "I trust they'll try to do the right thing," I responded. "But 300 people and animals were down there, a lot of them with powers, easy to lose track of them, so just in case." "Ha!" Sky looked at me and I sighed. "So, the Wendigo, what was that thing?" According to files, Hydra didn't know anything beyond that they picked it up from the Canadian wilderness, and everyone looked at me funny when I suggested magic. "Wait, really?" Sky asked, grinning. "We live in a world with gods of thunder, super soldiers, and well, me," I said simply. "Magic, no matter if it can be explained by science or not, isn't out of the question anymore." I took a sip of my milkshake, hiding my thoughts on the people I'd tried to get in contact with. "For now, the Wendigo is getting transported to the prison we've been building." "The raft," Sky said. "Is it even finished?" "Some of it is," I said. "Enough to hold him. He'll be one of the first prisoners." As for the scientists and soldiers, they're getting interrogated. So I guess today went well. Hell, I'll drink to that. Sky tapped her drink to mine. We sipped for a bit. I wondered for a moment about if I should get some sleep or not when Sky spoke again. You know, Ward and I, we used to do this, talk about missions and stuff, before he was killed. What happened? I tentatively asked. John Garrett Sky leaned against the bar, her eyes on her drink. He told Ward to hold off anyone stopping his escape. Coulson tried to stop Garrett, and I'm sorry, I said sadly. What for? Sky said, with a sour laugh. He betrayed us. It's not like he was ever really our friend. He may not have been yours, I said softly. I never met Ward, never got to know him, but I think you were his, and that it sucks, knowing that everything he said could have been a lie. It was a lie, Sky hissed, looking at me with a glare. He just spent months with us, pretending he was our friend, that he cared just to give it all to Hydra. She stopped for a moment, looking at me. I thought he was my friend. More than that, and all along he was using me.
I didn't know what to say.
Damn it, I wish I was good at this sort of thing. Look, I just know you, so I can't speak for or against this guy. He was an asshole. I'm betting, but it probably still hurts, having to look back at all the times he was nice or kind and having to reassess them. I rubbed the back of my head. Sky, I can't tell you how to deal with what he did, except that John Garrett is probably the only person alive with real answers. Sky blinked at that, then she seemed thoughtful. Before I could say anything else, the Omnitrix began to ring for an incoming communication. I raised it up and tapped it. Dial, Natasha said. I need you at the Enterprise. Bruce's cousin, Jennifer Walters, has been kidnapped. Oh shit, Sky and I said in unison. I got up and ran to the windows, heading for the balcony. Does he know? Not yet, Natasha answered. We're keeping the information compartmentalized for now. Have him meet me in the Defiant, I said, swinging my Ketum backpack on. I'll tell him. Are you sure? Natasha said. Bruce has control over the other guy most days, but when he finds out about this, there are only a few people who can take on the Hulk, I replied. One is Creel, who's asleep, the other is Thor, who isn't answering my calls. Natasha snorted at that. The last one is me. I turned to look at Sky, who'd rushed after me. Sorry we couldn't talk more, Sky. No biggie, Sky brushed her hair behind her head and smiled at me. You still owe me that suit of armor, though. I'm getting jealous of Pepper. Rain check, my backpack grew, becoming a simple flight pack rather than my full armor. It wouldn't let me fly for long, let alone with any maneuverability, but it would let me get up the helicarrier above. Talk more tomorrow? If you have time, Sky grinned. See ya, superhero. I gave her a grin, then launched into the sky. As I rocketed towards the helicarrier, my smile began to fade. Hydra had kidnapped Jennifer, most likely to make her this universe's She-Hulk. Bruce was going to be pissed. Guess it was time for something impulsive. I looked down at the Omnitrix thoughtfully. January 17th. In the early morning over the deserts of Colorado, Bruce looked over at me from the co-pilot seat of the Defiant. You finally going to tell me what this is about? Natasha told me you needed my help with something secret. I do, I told him calmly, flying towards a plateau, the large brown mountain looking very pretty in the sunlight. Something has happened, and I think we need to talk. I have some suspicions, and if I'm right, we need to deal with it. Okay, what is it? Bruce asked. I didn't answer. Mahmoud, seriously, what is going on? Something bad happened, Bruce. Natasha gave me all the information before you came to the Quinjet. The other Avengers are getting contacted. Oh, Bruce winced. Is it Hydra? Did they send Blonsky? Is it a code green? I took my right hand off the control to rub my eyes, only to grab it again when the Defiant shifted slightly. God, I'm tired. Look, I'm going to land us real quick. Do you mind? Bruce nodded, still looking confused. I moved the Defiant to fly over the plateau, landing on the flat top. The back door opened, and I walked over to exit the Quinjet, Bruce hurriedly following me out. We walked for a bit across the stone and dirt. Mahmoud, Bruce said. I stopped. What is going on? I brought you out here for two reasons. First, it's offered to help you and Hulk find some sort of equilibrium. Mahmoud, I told you, Bruce began to say, annoyed. Emil Blonsky is a trained killer, and he's no longer testing his powers. I turned to look at Bruce, still wearing my Iron Man shirt and armor backpack. That woman who kidnapped Sharon and Trip is proof they have even more gamma-enhanced individuals fighting alongside them. Can't you just cure them? Bruce asked. You did to the people in the graveyard. There was an unspoken accusation to his words. If I could that for those people, why couldn't I do the same for him? Omnitrix, repair Bruce Banner's DNA, I said simply. The Omnitrix beeped, and my voice came from it. Unable to comply, Bruce Banner's DNA is undamaged. Are you kidding me? Bruce asked, stepping forward and glaring at the Omnitrix with anger in his eyes, his neck a slightly lime-like color. What does that mean? We talked about it before, Bruce, I reminded him. The gamma gene. That little bit of DNA that lets you transform into the Hulk, rather than dying or becoming a genetic monster. I'm already a genetic monster. Bruce stepped to glare at me. I tried to stay calm.
You're not a monster, Bruce.
You and Hulk have both shown that you can be in control, that you can do some good, but the people in the warehouse weren't like that, or the animals. The way I heard it, some of them had spent years in pain, growing random mutations across their bodies, bones and muscle getting exposed. Compared to them, you got off lucky, Bruce. He seemed to deflate at that. I watched him turn with his hands on his hips, breathing deeply. Bruce, the gamma gene. There's more to it. It might be hereditary. He turned to look at me, brow furrowed. Yeah, I know. As in people in your family might have it. People like Jennifer. Bruce stared at me, uncomprehending. I tried to figure out how to say what needed to be said. I went for blunt. I'm not the only who thought of that, Bruce. Stearns did too. Sharon and Trip yesterday. That was just the start. Hydra has Jennifer Walters, and I think Stearns is going to turn her into a gamma-enhanced. His eyes widened. His breath came out in a soft blast of air. He stumbled back in horror. No, Bruce, she's going to be all right, I said gently. We're going to work to find her. I just want you to be ready for the fact that Stearns may be... No! Bruce's voice changed, becoming a deep and booming echo of sound. He went to his knees and slammed his hands against the plateau. The earth shook. He grabbed at the ground, his eyes wild with rage and panic. Not enough. He's going to change her, I yelled, stumbling as the whole mountain shuddered from his strike. To make her a Hulk. His shirt began to rip. His eyes glared up at me. I kept talking. My Omnitrix already at the ready, and when Blonsky has a Hulk of his own, your cousin, to fight against. What is he going to do? He'll see her as practice. Someone he can hurt until he can get to you. Bruce stopped growing. He stared at me. For just a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If I'd failed. Jennifer! Jennifer! He got to his feet and stared at his arms as they exploded in size, changing from his tanned brown to a familiar shade of green. He screamed, raising his hands into the sky, his shirt and shoes exploding away from him. He grew in height and weight, muscles growing to insane sizes. The transformation looked rough, painful. I thought it would be like when I transformed. But there was something raw and horrific in Bruce's change. Then it was done. Bruce Banner was gone, and the Hulk stared down at me. The 8-foot-tall, muscular, green and extremely pissed-off badass gamma monster. He eyed me, rising up with a growl, and clenched his fists with an audible crack. Well, mission accomplished. Yay? Rad! Hulk threw a punch at me, a slow and lazy one that told me he just wanted me to back away. At least, slow and lazy for him. Oh shit, I ducked, feeling the wind from his giant green fist fly past. Holy crap, was he fast or what? I raised a hand up and leaped back. Hulk, Jennifer needs your help, but you need to work with Bruce, he roared, a mindless, unthinking sound of rage. I grimaced when he leaped away rather than listen to me. I ran to the edge of the plateau to see him jumping across the desert. Okay, fine, I activated the Omnitrix, raising the watch's dial lift up as the hologram floated over the watch's face. Percussive therapy. I found myself grinning. Gotta say, I've wanted to see this fight since I was a kid. I slammed down on the Omnitrix. It was a risk, but for this alien, it was just the right thing to do for my first transformation into him, along with a certain battle cry, going hero. My skin changed color, going from brown to a deep red as two new eyes grew beneath my original set. My Iron Man shirt became a black and white striped muscle t-shirt, stretching out as my biceps. My chest, everything expanded with layer upon layer of muscles, and my body grew in height, taller and taller. My ponytail became longer, while the rest of my hair disappeared. My 5 toes became 2 talons, and the backs of my forearms grew large spikes, as my smooth skin became thicker and tougher. Then 2 bulges grew out of my oblique muscles, before exploding outwards, becoming arms as massive and powerful as my other ones, golden armbands wrapping around my 4 wrists. I extended them, raising the 2 new arms with my other ones, and cried out with all the power in my superhuman lungs. 4 arms! The plateau cracked beneath my feet at the shockwave caused by my voice. I grinned. Oh yeah, let's go wild! I leaped, whooping with joy as the wind rushed past me. My 4 arms extended outwards into the morning sky. I landed hundreds of feet later, my feet digging deep imprints on the desert floor, and jumped again, cratering the wasteland below. Hulk had a head start, so I moved quickly to catch up with him. The 2 of us jumped over and over, covering miles in leaps. I jumped one more time, aiming for Hulk at the apex of his leap. "Hulk!" I yelled, wrapping all of my arms around his waist from behind. He roared in anger as the 2 of us fell from the sky for hundreds of meters. We crashed into the side of a mountain, sending dust and rocks flying as it cratered under our giant forms. Grug! Hulk spun around, punching me into the air. I grunted at the impact, spinning in the air for a while before hitting the desert at high velocity. I ground into the earth for a long while, finally coming to a stop after leaving a trench. I blinked as I laid in the large amount of dirt I'd kicked up. Didn't hurt. He must be going easy on me. The booming sound of something landing nearby brought my 4 eyes to look at the Hulk, who had landed in the trench I'd made. He glared across at me. With a grunt, I lifted myself up, and up, and up, until I towered over him. I blinked, surprised. Hulk was around 8.5 feet tall, which meant he was up to my waist in height. "Wow, I didn't know I'd be so much taller than you," I mused. He took offense to that. "Grag!" I got punched in the jaw. Hard. I stepped back under the impact, my right foot stepping back to stop me from falling. I blinked my 4 eyes, then I narrowed them. Okay. I rose and punched Hulk in the face with my upper right arm. He fell to his knees, a shockwave flying through the air at the impact of my fist on his jaw. The unfriendly green giant spat out a tooth, roared in rage, and leaped at me. I roared back, taking his next punch before we began to brawl. Director Maria Hill of Bridge. "Where did they go?" Maria demanded, as Natasha and Steve followed her through the halls of the Enterprise. Maria wore her blue uniform, while Natasha and Steve chose to instead dress in navy blue t-shirts with Bridge logos across the chest and military pants. Dial said he wanted to tell him in a location far from any civilians, Natasha said, but he used the Defiance cloaking system to keep us from tracking him, and his comms are off deliberately. Whatever he's doing, he wants privacy. "We can't bypass it?" Maria asked, frustrated. "The Defiant is the most advanced ship on the planet," Steve reminded her. "Tony said he's going to try and track it, but—" Steve sounded like he was amused, frustrated, and happy all at once. "Tony says he trusts Dial," Natasha said. Maria shook her head, her ponytail waving with the motion. "Look, I get Tony likes his little proteges, but Dial can't just kidnap our most emotionally unstable Avenger and take him to the middle of nowhere without letting us know about it." "Tony says Dial has a plan," Natasha said with a shrug. "A plan to do what?" Maria asked. "To help Banner control the Hulk." Tony walked around the corner, joining the 3. He wore a shirt that made Maria blink in surprise, a black one with Dial's logo in the center. "Remember the TV Dial made?" TV was the code word for the dimensional viewer to keep eavesdroppers from knowing anything about it. Some of the channels gave him an idea, showed him some solutions. He's betting on the Omnitrix, making those solutions possible. Tony, Steve said softly. We need to know where he is. I've got X and Jarvis working on it, Tony said dismissively. In the meantime, we have other problems. Maria grimaced. He's right. I've transferred the prisoners the reserve Avengers rescued, moved to a facility Fury gave us. It's called the Playground. We'll be using it to train and help any superhumans we find from now on. What are they like? Steve asked, worried. Scared, Maria said simply. The four stopped in a room with a large table in it. It varies, but that's the general feeling between them all. We're still finding out where they're from. Some aren't even American, so now I'm worried about the immigration fanatics getting on my ass.
Is that a real concern?
Steve asked incredulously. You really aren't the political sort, are you? Maria asked. And don't forget the animals with powers. People have been asking about them. We going to start the pet Avengers? Tony quipped. Our first priority should be protecting everyone, Steve said firmly, everyone ignoring Tony's joke. The billionaire didn't seem to care. A lot of these people are as strong as you are or have some limited form of Creel's abilities, Natasha said. We already know China and Russia have made inquiries to be allowed to take in their citizens, despite the fact some of the ones they've named actually are US citizens. People in the US government are doing the same thing, asking to study the people we've found. The fact is we just got hundreds of super soldiers of varying quality for free, and most of them just want normal lives. Maria eyed the group. When we made Bridge, this was one of the reasons to protect both worlds. We'll do that, no matter the cost. You understand? Yeah, hurrah and all that, Tony said. Despite his dismissive tone, he seemed to approve. You said most of them? Some of them have asked to join Bridge, Maria said. The three Avengers blinked at that. Maria smirked. I'm thinking of taking them up on it. We still need to figure everything out first. In the meantime, there's what your team discovered. Not as flashy as what the reserve Avengers discovered, but it may have given us another target. In the meantime, Natasha, you have someone to talk to. Director, a woman said from the door. The group turned to see Victoria Hand standing with Falcon. The reserve Avengers leader gave everyone a smile, Steve and Natasha returning it while Tony gave him a wave. We've got the interrogation with Hale. Maria nodded, turning back to the others. Tony, you work on tracking down Deal and Bruce. Natasha, get to your appointment. Steve, meet up with Fury and work on what all the teams found. We are going to hit another Hydra facility as soon as possible. In the meantime, I want us to be ready to mobilize the next time Hydra tries to take one of ours. They try it again, we stop them all. With that, they broke off, Sam in hand following Maria. As Maria walked, she tried to relax. I feel the same way sometimes, Sam said. Maria looked at him, surprised. What? Being a leader, after spending your time following, it's hard, he said in a low voice. Hand stepped further away, the pink-stripped woman apparently realizing it was a moment for privacy. Not to mention the people we're in charge of now, some of them just insanely more powerful than us. I've been faking it as best as I can, personally. You seem to be doing a lot better than I am. Maria almost stopped walking. Since becoming director, she'd worked hard not to show how overwhelmed she was now. All the new things coming at her that she had to deal with personally, Hydra, new technology, new superhumans, new laws, paperwork so insane she could barely handle it. She was sleeping a few hours a night to keep in top form, but she didn't realize she'd been showing the exhaustion she'd been feeling. I only noticed because I feel the same way, Sam said, apparently reading her mind. He smiled. Well, kind of. In a really small way. But you're doing fine if you ask my sorry ass. Maria bit her lip, thinking, thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. They got to their destination, and Maria walked in without hesitation. Hell, Hill, the older woman responded, smiling in her white prison uniform. And this must be one of your new superheroes. Sup, Sam said, standing tall in his full armor. We're here about the graveyard, Maria said, sitting down across from Hale. About everything we found there. Hale frowned. It should have just been failed experiment. Dead bodies and destroyed machinery. It was more than that, Maria said with a frown. Sam explained what his team had found. Maria watched Hale carefully, watching as she paled, frowned, and suddenly became angry. Once finished speaking, Hale clenched her fists. They lied to me, or just felt I didn't need to know the full truth. Hale smirked. Men, always keeping secrets, looking down on women. Maria didn't respond. Hale had shown resentment towards men before, seeing them as holding her back. Understandable considering the misogyny Whitehall exhibited. She had a tendency to blame all her problems on it. To an illogical extent, once again, an understandable reaction considering how Hydra and the Air Force had treated her. Ruby? Hale asked. She's in her first meeting, Maria said simply. Something seemed to pop inside Hale. Some kind of anxiety, a deep worry in her heart. She leaned back in her seat. Okay, then it's time I told you everything about the Confederacy. I have a feeling you'll need it. Frank Castle, Raven. Frank Castle sat in a room in front of a table, his leg bouncing as he waited. The morning before, he'd been in Iraq for the next mission. Next thing he knew, top brass had shown up and told him to pack up and move out. Then they'd taken him to a random room in the middle of building in the desert. He was still dressed in his uniform, the green camo sweater and pants he always wore in his off time between missions. The military soldier sighed in annoyance, looking at the one-way mirror that dominated one side of the room. You know, if you CIA assholes are going to drag me over here, the least you can do is actually talk to me. There was no response to his grumpy comment. He growled, staring at himself in the mirrored window. Will you just... The door opened. A man walked into the room wearing a business suit. Lieutenant Frank Castle, the man said with a smile. Frank was immediately on guard. While it had been a long time since he'd seen the asshole, this man reminded him of Agent Orange. A spy. Who the fuck are you? The man smiled. Agent Phil Coulson. I work with Bridge, an organization that is continuing from S.H.I.E.L.D. Frank scoffed. Yeah, I heard about you guys. The Avengers' pet toys. Phil chuckled. Not so much actually. We do work with them, but I don't think that descriptor would work. Frank scoffed again, looking dismissively away from Phil. The agent sat across from the soldier and put a tablet on the table. I must say, Lieutenant Castle, I had a hell of a time with your files. All I wanted to do was talk to you, but then I had to deal with the CIA. Are you familiar with a man by the name of... He looked at his tablet, reading from it. William J. Rollins III. Frank stared at Phil, nonplussed. How the hell should I know? Because you beat his eye out, Phil smirked. I actually liked hearing about that. I'm not someone who takes pleasure in the pain of others, but everything we've uncovered tells us he deserved it. Nothing Phil could have told him would have surprised Frank Castle more. Operation Cerberus, Phil continued, was an unsanctioned operation. We're going through, taking out all the ringleaders. You, however, were pointed out for a potential recruitment for something more. Frank shook his head, crossing his arms. No thanks. Phil blinked. You haven't even heard my offer. Don't want to hear it, Frank said simply. You don't want to go home? Phil asked, sounding honestly confused. Frank stilled. What? Well, that's what the job would have as one of the benefits. You fight the enemies of the world during the day, then go home at night. Phil passed Frank the tablet. It's part of our new elite unit. Some of your old squad will be on it. Once we find out who was tricked by Rollins or Agent Orange, as he was called at the time, Phil chuckled. You'll get an increased salary, of course, better equipment, and... This damn thing goes how fast? Frank asked, staring at the specs of one of the vehicles being described as standard equipment. Escape velocity is one of the descriptors I've heard so far, Phil said. But you should know about the current enemy we are fighting. Hydra. Nazis? Frank asked, looking up. Well, they don't follow that doctrine anymore, mostly, but that is where they started. You'll be working under Steve Rogers and the Avengers, aiding them in hunting down Hydra. Let me get this straight, Frank put down the tablet. and looked at Phil. That asshole Agent Orange is getting arrested. You want me to join Bridge? I'd be able to see my family every night after work. Work which would be me hunting Nazis with Captain fucking America. That about right? Phil frowned at the language but nodded. Essentially, yes.
What's the catch?
Phil sighed. I won't lie to you. You'll be seeing a lot of combat, Lieutenant Castle. We've been fighting Hydra for some time, and we may end up fighting them for even longer than that. This job, there won't be too many times on the job when you won't be fighting, killing. Frank thought about that for a moment. Again, what's the catch? Mahmoud Shahad dial. My fist slammed into Bruce's, sending a shockwave outward that destroyed vegetation and stone nearby. No, it hit the Hulk's fist. I couldn't treat them as the same exactly. I had to do more. God, I had no idea if this would even work. What if this was all useless? For a moment, doubt filled me. Hulk hit me during my moment of hesitation, his fist hitting me in the ribs hard enough to send me into a boulder and shatter it beneath my bulk. I shook my head after a moment. No, trust the Omnitrix. Heck, maybe Allah had something to do with this. I had gained the brute force alien, then Jennifer had been kidnapped. It had to mean something. Is that all you've got? I yelled, uppercutting Hulk with all four of my fists, sending him spinning into a mountain. I leaped after him, punching him deeper with a double right cross. Jennifer is in trouble, and this is all the power you can bring to save her. Craig! Hulk brought his feet up and kicked me in the chest, sending me up. I spun in the air and timed the moment for when he leaped towards me, his eyes wild. As soon as he was close enough, I reared back. When my fists hit his chest, time seemed to slow as the power gathered. Boom! Time restarted and Hulk was yelling as he rocketed back towards the mountain, ripping through the top of it. I landed after a moment and jumped. A rock slide had started because of Hulk's passage through the top of the mountain, making it sort of hard to reach the top. When I did, Hulk had gotten there as well. We eyed each other. Jennifer is being held by Hydra, I told Hulk. His face lost the constant angry glare, changing into something more pitiful. If you want to save her, you can't just brawl. You and Bruce need to work together. His anger returned. No Banner, only Hulk. Despite his negative response, I grinned. Hulk was talking. Then he leaped forward, punching me in the gut. I grunted at the impact, folding over his fist. Holy shit, could he hit hard. He punched me in the face, leaping to get up high enough, then kept punching me, bringing me to my knees. I roared in pain as my back hit the floor, bring my arms up to block my face as he punched down at me. Hulk, save Jenny! Hulk screamed. For all his rage, there was a desperation in his voice, as though if he yelled and punched for long and hard enough, he could make it true. Save her? I yelled, my massive arms blocking his, just as massive fists. How? Blonsky, Stearns, that gamma-enhanced woman, whatever else Hydra can drum up. You can't beat them all up, Hulk. Not alone. You and Bruce need to work together, to be smart and strong together. Hulk needs no. In mid-yell, I reached a hand up to wrap around his mouth, pulling him down to look into my 4 eyes. For a funny moment, his anger-filled eyes bounced up and down from one set of my eyes to the other, confused which one to glare into. How can you beat them when you can't even stop me? I punched him with 3 fists. Then I kept on doing it, holding him in place as my fists drummed across his chest. The earth and air shook, I around us, Hulk kicking at me as I held him in place and beat on him. Then I pushed him back, rising to tower over him as I panted. He looked up at me, his chest healing before my eyes. I'm not a fighter, Hulk. Not really. But at least I can think beyond anger. I can plan, I can think and plan. You're holding yourself back, both of you. Bruce won't let you use your full power, and you won't let him help you think things through. All you can do is punch and punch, the both of you struggling to hold on to control. Abomination doesn't have that problem, not even a bit. Hulk rose to his feet, staring it up at me. When he spoke again, it was with a pausing tone. He clearly wasn't used to talking without screaming at the top of his lungs. You jerk. I winced, realizing what a pontificating arsehole I sounded like.
Ari.
It's just, I saw other dimensions, Hulk. When you and Bruce work together, you become something so powerful almost nothing can stop you. You've both gone through the same bullshit, been hurt by the same people, you both love Jennifer. We can save her. And I bet, based on your personality, you don't want to just let someone else do it. Hulk save Jenny, he blinked, as though surprised by something. Bruce, save Jenny. Oh, thank God my stupid impulsive plan had worked. Then you guys have something you both want to fight for. Jennifer Walters, you work together, stop holding each other back, really fight. And Blonsky can't beat you. Hulk scoffed, turning around and pacing for a bit. You help Hulk? Like I can do that, I said with a sigh. Bruce told me he learned meditation, to try to learn to control you. Hulk won't sleep. He turned and walked towards me, fists clenched in rage. I'm not telling you to sleep, I said, raising my 4 hands up. We have some hours to ourselves, so instead of stopping the anger, we focus it. Focus on what you need to do, to get as mad as you can and still have control. A tranquil fury. Talk too much, Hulk grumbled, yawning dramatically. That surprised me so much I laughed. He was more like a big kid when he wasn't in combat. Yeah, I do. How about this? I slammed 2 fists into palms, grinning with slightly fanged teeth. Let's fight, while you and Bruce try to work together. We'll go for as long as we can, or at least until someone finds us. And if it works, you can beat down Blonsky, show Wydra and anyone else what happens the next time they try to hurt your family. Hulk seemed to think about that for a moment. Boom! Then his fist was slamming into mine as he grinned. I grinned back. Then I punched him in the jaw. He stepped back as I took the boxing stance Steve taught me, stepping over to tower above him. Hulk raised his hands to mimic my stance, stepping in and giving me a jab. It was a bit rough, slightly telegraphed. I blocked it and returned with a right cross, only for him to grab my arm, twist his hips, and flip me to the floor with a cratering smash. I blinked up at him as he grinned. Bana no Jujet? He seemed to get frustrated, going for an easier word. Kung Fu! Wondering how the hell they'd gotten such a quick rapport, I grinned up at him, for Jenny. Hulk nodded fiercely. I pictured Bruce, smaller but no less determined, doing the same. Then I flipped up and tackled him, our enormous forms falling down the mountain, smashing into each other with our fists. Dude, turning into giant monsters no matter the reason is so much fun. Natasha Romanov, Black Widow. Natasha entered the training room of the Enterprise, looking across the room at the young girl currently occupying the bench near the mat. The girl ignored Natasha in favor of lying on her stomach, headphones in her ears as she idly bobbed her head to the loud music with her eyes closed. Excuse me, Natasha said simply. Ruby Hale, right? Ruby was 14 years old, with platinum blonde hair, a bit of acne across her nose, and a level of fitness rare in a teenager. Natasha waited for Ruby to say something. When she didn't, the red-headed assassin spoke once more. We're supposed to speak about your accommodations. The girl ignored her, still bobbing her head. As though Natasha wasn't trained enough in body language to see the way she'd shifted as Natasha entered, or how the girl's body was just barely up off the bench, enough that she could quickly move if attacked. Natasha eyed the young girl calmly. The two of them may as well have been statues for all the movement they exhibited. Well, have a nice day then. I'm gonna go enjoy a movie. Natasha turned and left. After a bit of walking through the halls of the Enterprise, she heard some fast footsteps behind her. Natasha ignored the person chasing her, continuing to move through the ship with her swaying catwalk. Someone reached out for her arm. Natasha, sensing the lightning-fast movement, stepped aside from it as subtly as though she'd never moved at all, leaving person reaching towards her to grasp empty air. Natasha turned to look at her, raising an eyebrow. I'm sorry. Did you need something? Ruby blinked, looking shocked. Then she pouted, trying to school her face to look intimidating, which she did. Her face and eyes hard and cruel in a way no teenager should ever understand. But Natasha barely held back the urge to laugh. So cute. Where's my mum? The teenager growled. Imprisoned for working with a terrorist organization. Natasha cocked an eyebrow. Is that really why you followed me after ignoring me? Because if so, I'm done. Ruby scowled. Aren't you supposed to train me? A lazy smile rose across Natasha's face. Why? Ruby's scowl became something vicious. You're supposed to. The words of a young girl who had been told all her life that she was special, that she was meant to be a destined leader and warrior. So cute. I volunteered my time, Ruby, Natasha said simply. I was asked if I would help you, and I agreed, but you aren't the only thing I have on my plate. I'm an Avenger, an agent of Bridge, someone who works every day to protect the world from threats. I'm not going to sit and watch you ignore me, because you decided you wanted to be spoiled today. Ruby's eyes widened in rage. She lashed out with a punch aimed to collapse Natasha's larynx. The redhead grabbed Ruby's wrist in a vicious grip. She twisted her arm behind her back while kicking Ruby's legs, slamming her to the floor. Yah! Ruby screamed, struggling to rise against the iron hold Natasha had on her. I'm sorry, did you try to punch me? Natasha teased, her voice soft against Ruby's ear. You really are spoiled, so used to people bending over backward for you that you thought you could attack me without even a bruise to show for it. A female bridge agent with a small afro came around the corner and stopped at the sight of Natasha, holding a screaming and cursing Ruby on the floor. Natasha glanced at her. She spun and walked away, leaving Natasha to look down at Ruby. We made a promise to your mother. Listen to me, Natasha tapped the side of Ruby's head when the teenager wouldn't stop yelling. We made a promise we'd train you, and I can do that. I can show you things Hydra never had access to. Skills from the Red Room, all the times I assassinated someone from childhood to adulthood, the things that let me survive an attempt by the Winter Soldier himself. Ruby stopped struggling. But I'm not going to waste time with childish rebellion, Natasha let her go. Rising up, Ruby curled up and rolled to her feet, popping up to face Natasha, only to recoil when she realized Natasha had stepped in closer. The older assassin was no longer smiling. I'm not going to train you if you expect to be able to decide to listen to music when you should be at attention, waiting for me, or if you just skip a lesson because you'd rather do something else. I'm not going to punish you or waste my time even talking to you. We'll just be done. You will not question me, not for one moment. And if you do, you might become an Avenger. You might even become more than that one day. But until then, you will show discipline. Ruby stared up at her, trying to hide the deep bruises on her wrist. Oh, go ahead. Think about it if you want. Natasha checked her watch. I've got some time free, but like I said, I've got things to do. If you decide the time I invest in you isn't worth your attention, why the hell should it be worth mine? Because I'm not wasting anything if you're going to act like a teenager rather than an assassin. Ruby huffed, crossing her arms. I am a teenager. Natasha narrowed her eyes. We both know better than that. Any petulance Ruby was showing faded. She looked up at the older woman. After a long stare down between them, she nodded. There was an eager light in her eyes now, the burning of pride. Okay, how do we start? The woman who showed up just now, Natasha said, indicating the bridge agent that had come upon them. Track her down, find out what she tells others about what she saw. I'll shadow you and you tell me what you found out. After that, we'll start with something easy. As Ruby nodded eagerly and turned to run after the agent, Natasha felt disquiet in her heart. Here she was, doing something she never thought she would, training a young girl to be an assassin. The Red Room, Hydra, what did it matter? Here she was, doing the same thing. She turned around. What do you think? Clint and Bucky walked out of the shadows, both wearing bridge camo gear. They walked forward with the steady and quiet steps Ruby was trying to master. They joined her, Bucky's face neutral while Clint gave her a sad smile. You're going to try and deprogram her? Clint asked. I'm not sure I can. It never worked on me, Natasha admitted. All I can really do is give her better targets, layer her skills with morals and rules, try to do what worked for me, but she'll always be a killer. You can see it in her, the way she walks, the way she's always about to slice someone's throat out, and she has too much pride. No good assassin is arrogant. It'll destroy her if we let it fester. Bucky nodded in agreement, while Clint, the only parent in the group, let out a disquieted sigh. We'll take care of her, though. I'd like her to meet you both, if you don't mind, Natasha said. She showed interest in us, in heroes. I think in her own extremely twisted way, she really does want to be a hero, even if she doesn't know what that means. I'm in, Bucky said immediately. He gave them a smile so fast it might as well have not existed. Reformed assassins have to stick together. Maybe we should start a support group, Clint joked. He looked after where Ruby had gone, then back at Natasha. By the way, is it me? Cute, right? Natasha grinned. She's like a deadly puppy. Bucky refused to say anything to that, but Natasha's grin widened at the slight twitch of acknowledgement his lips did. Wonder what Bobby and Hartley will think, Clint muttered. Mahmoud Shahad, deal. A pair of loud roars echoed over the deserts of Colorado. Rag! Gra! Hulk and I had grabbed each other's hands, me using my slightly stronger upper ones, and were pushing against each other, our muscles straining as the ground under our feet crumbled. For just a moment we struggled against each other. Then I used my other two hands to uppercut Hulk, sending him back a step. I leaned down and grabbed his legs, sending him to the ground, then began to spin, around and around, dragging Hulk through the air. Yarg! Hulk yelled, his hands swinging. Fly! With another spin, I let go, sending Hulk shooting into the distance. Whoa! I shook my head, stumbling slightly. Dizzy. With that I leaped after Hulk, my giant leg muscles shooting me through the air. There was a pure joy in being forearms, having all that power, feeling my muscles move against each other as I flew through the air. I thought I'd felt powerful as Wrath or Diamond Head, but there was something different and addicting about being forearms. Maybe it was something that naturally came to Tetramans, the desire to fight and engage in combat with others that were just as powerful. I landed in front of Hulk, who'd smashed into a plateau. He was getting to his knees and glared at me. He rose up to his feet, then sped forward to punch me in the face. I did the same, a shockwave spreading from the impact. Over and over, we hit each other, Hulk screaming in rage as I did the same. He grabbed my arm and tossed me into a rock face, moving in to hit me in the ribs with some lightning-fast punches. I blocked his fists with my lower arms and slammed my upper arms into his shoulders, pushing him back 10 feet. His feet grinding against the earth, he came to a stop and glared at me. I pulled my arms back. Realizing what I was doing, Hulk copied me. 3 pairs of palms slapped together, and 2 massive shockwaves of sound erupted from each of us. The earth shook, my ears rang, and rock slides kicked off. We roared as our powerful shockwaves clashed, nearby bushes tearing apart from pure air pressure as we caused a localized hurricane alongside the earthquakes we'd made. Once the shockwave ended, I stepped forward at the same time as Hulk. Our fist flew forward again, my limited boxing and 4 limbs against Hulk's limited Brazilian jiu-jitsu and incredible healing. One thing I noticed was that he really was getting stronger as we clashed. I'd realized while studying everyone in my first weeks that Hulk in this universe wasn't famous for getting stronger as he got angrier, but he was slowly, much slower than in the comics, but was doing it. In the back of my mind, in between my fists slamming into his, I wondered if that was because of this new compromise between Bruce and Hulk, or if he'd simply never had to get stronger before. I discarded it to kick him in the legs, then slam a lower right fist into his ribs. After a long fight, the two of us brawling on a mountain and slowly turning it into a valley, I finally had to stop, falling back to sit on my ass as Hulk panted. "Are you feeling?" I asked. And aloud, Hulk pouted, always talking, thinking. Well, that is where his strength lies. You punch, he thinks, and together you'll always hit the right thing. Loud, Hulk sat down next to me, and the two of us turned to look out at the desert. Hulk just want to be alone. I think you mean you just want people to stop attacking you, the smaller brute grunted in agreement. Hey, I nudged him with my elbow. If they do, we'll all help you. I don't care who comes at you, every Avenger is going to stop them, and that includes helping Jennifer. We are friends, both you and Bruce. When I looked at Hulk, he was smiling, the sun rising across his face. Then he frowned, looking at something in the distance. I turned as well, focusing. A column of dust was coming towards, and were those helicopters? Axe, I said with a grunt. Send over the Defiant. I think it's time for us to leave. Agreed, sir. US military forces have been sent to investigate reports of the Hulk battling an unknown being. How in the hell? Trailing off, I tapped on the Omnitrix, turning back into my human form. I grunted slightly at the feeling of returning to a human body, but got over the lack of power quickly. Okay, Hulk, you want to get on the Defiant? Hulk don't want a banner. Ha! He was a lot more intimidating now that I was smaller than him. He glowered down at me, walking up to tower even more. Apparently, he'd taken the fact that Forearms was bigger than him as an insult, because he managed to look very smug about the height difference between us. Well, what do you say about you staying Hulk until we get home, then Bruce can take over? I asked. I mean, if Bruce is okay with it, you need the practice anyways. Both of you do. Hulk huffed, blowing my hair back. Okay. Let's stop for some food first, though, I said, my stomach grumbling. I'm hungry. Hulk seemed to perk up at that as the Defiant landed behind us. Turned out Hulk had never had food himself before. I ended up buying a bunch of fast food of all kinds from a restaurant I'd never been to before. The big guy spent the ride home stuffing himself happily in the back of the ship. When we got to the Enterprise and landed on the flight deck, the first thing people saw when the door opened was the Hulk, glowering angrily at the flight crew. He turned into Bruce right after, of course, but it was still funny seeing the guys panic at the sight of a glaring Hulk. Which led to later when Bruce and I, me in my Iron Man shirt, him in ripped pants, were sitting in front of Maria Hill and Nick Fury in the lockers, both of us on a bench. So I've managed to make it clear it was a training exercise, Maria said, but Ross has requested he be informed the next time something like that happens. Maria punctuated her words in a voice that would broker no argument. I'll bet, Bruce grunted. And there is more. Fury sat down on the bench across from us, focusing on Bruce. She wants to see you. I gave her your usual response, of course. Actually, Bruce said thoughtfully. Tell her I'll meet her at Stanley's when this is over. Fury blinked, surprised. Are you sure? Yeah. Bruce rubbed the back of his neck, looking up at Maria and Fury. It'll be good to see her. What did you two do anyway? Maria asked, looking between us. 3. Technically, I looked at Bruce. I think we have an understanding, right? Bruce grinned. It was a very Hulk-like grin, his eyes flashing emerald. Something like that. We both love Jennifer, and now, the Hulk. And I both hate Hydras. So you're going to want to start sending us on missions soon. Maria stared at him, then looked at Fury. He smirked.
Don't look at me. I ain't the director.
Maria glared at Fury for that. Anyway, Maria said with a sigh, let's gather with the others. We should have a mission soon. We've made some progress on tracking down Hydra's main base. Nodding, I rose to follow when I saw Tony outside talking to Cap while wearing a Ben 10 t-shirt. It took me a second to realize what was wrong with that. I went to go ask him about it when Bruce stopped me, grabbing my arm. Hey, listen, Bruce said hesitantly. I want to thank you. I never really thought Hulk and I could talk, could understand each other. But, it feels good. In those other worlds, the one that you saw, did other Hulks, other Bruces, did they do the same thing? Sometimes, I said with a grin, usually ends with you guys destroying a planet. Bruce's eyes widened in panic, and I hurried to speak when I realized how bad that sounded. Bad planets, and it only happened once, I promise. Hey, Tony and Steve walked in as Maria and Fury walked out. Tony grinning, check it out, just came off the line. He gestured to his Ben 10 t-shirt. Gotta say, kid, the merchandising guys are loving the reserve Avengers, especially since everyone has the snazzy armor and you've got 11 aliens to make action figures out of. Although Pepper had to yell at some guy who wanted to convince Sam and Rhodey to do a rap album. How'd therapy go? We broke 2 mountains, I admitted. It was pretty metal. It was actually really fun, Bruce said in his husky voice. Tony and Steve shared a look, Steve surprised and Tony grinning. Steve sighed, moving forward to put an arm around me. Come on, you've got training. As he dragged me off, Tony spoke to Bruce. You know, we can make you some clothes too if you want. That way you don't show up naked all the time, unless you've been hiding your exhibitionist side all this time. No judgment. As Bruce stuttered and Steve led away, the captain spoke. Mamut, we need to talk about you doing stuff like that. Today's training is based on communication. After 3 hours of boxing with Cap while he talked to me about my responsibilities, I had a meeting to get to. Someone had put in a request to meet with me, and I flew through New York in astrodactyl form to get to them. It was about 4 p.m. when I got to the Wakandan embassy in Midtown. Well, the consulate general at least. Funnily enough, I ended up flying over the embassy of my parents' homeland, Morocco. As I landed on the sidewalk in front of the tall red brick building, people started taking photos with their phones. I ignored them to step through the gates and walk up the stairs toward the entrance. Men in black suits, all of them African, stood around the grounds of the embassy, watching me carefully as I walked towards the front doors. 2 guards in green military uniforms carrying rifles stood at either side of the doors, while a beautiful African woman with a shaved head wearing a black dress waited for me. Good afternoon, I said politely, feeling a bit ashamed for the fact I was still wearing my Iron Man shirt, but going with it. I have a meeting. I know, the woman said grimly. I am Io. I will be guiding you. And guarding him, I added. She didn't answer, simply waving at the guards, who both opened the doors. I followed Io inside. The inside of the Wakandan embassy was all right. Not exactly what I was hoping for, as any reference to Wakanda itself were kept to some weapons along the walls. Very traditional-looking artwork, and the various servants roaming around. I noted the servants often were bald women in great shape, but ignored that. Ayo went into an elevator, nodding for me to enter as well. After a wait, the doors opened to reveal an office, where 2 men turned to look at us. One was T'Chaka, the king of Wakanda, eyeing me as I followed Ayo. The other I recognized from news reports. He was tall and strong-looking, with skin as dark as the king's and a well-trimmed beard. He was giving me a suspicious look when I entered. Couldn't blame him. Not nice when someone knows your country's millennia-old secrets. I gave the Wakandan salute, both arms crossed over my chest. King T'Chaka, Prince T'Challa. It is wonderful to meet you both. I'm honored. As am I, T'Challa said, nodding towards me. Please sit. He gestured to a couch with a traditional-looking coffee table. I moved towards it, sitting down on the sinfully comfortable couch. T'Challa sat down in front of me in a large chair, while T'Challa was to my right in another one. Ayu stood behind T'Challa as a servant woman with no hair walked over to stand to my left. Now I believe you know what I wish to talk about. About how Wakanda is currently the most advanced nation on Earth. Despite masquerading otherwise, I said simply. T'Challa, Io, and the servant were very, very focused on me. T'Chaka simply nodded. Indeed, I suppose my first question is, would you like something to drink? I blinked, surprised, then laughed. Yeah, that would be nice. Something from your nation? I haven't had the privilege of trying Wakandan food and drinks. Tea, I believe, would suffice. T'Chaka waved at the servant, who walked into another room, Io subtly moving to another position. Now, for my second question, how did you discover our secret? Other universes had to reveal it, I said. Everyone blinked. I thought for a moment, this information does not leave this room. I want all 3 of you to promise, please. T'Challa leaned forward, the prince staring at me. When he spoke, his voice was accented, though less than his father's. Is it truly that important? It's worth more than all of the world, no matter how much vibranium you have. T'Chaka thought about that. Very well, by the goddess Bast, I will not reveal this. As do I, T'Challa said. Ajoni nodded. I spoke immediately. I had the dubious privilege of seeing into other universes recently. I destroyed the means by which I did so, but before that, I saw other worlds, other possibilities, even futures. In more than a few out of the infinite ones in the multiverse, I saw ones where Wakanda revealed their true power to the world. In many cases, to defend the Earth from danger. T'Chaka frowned but waved for me to continue. In these worlds, you were sometimes, I glanced at T'Challa, sometimes dead, old age, assassination, self-sacrifice, all the reasons a person can die, and the Black Panther steps onto the world stage. He joins the Avengers, saves the world. Sometimes, Shuri will become the Panther as well, so that you, I indicated T'Challa, can aid the universe. I might as well have dropped a bomb in the room. As you and T'Challa seemed stricken at the thought of their king father dead, I wondered for a moment if the Dora Milaje were betrothed to the king, as in the 616 universe, before pushing the idea down. The servant walked into the room with my tea. "Thank you," I said, taking the tea and taking a sip, wincing when the aromatic and delicious drink singed my tongue slightly. I put it down on a cloth coaster the servant had provided. "How can we believe this?" T'Chaka asked, looking skeptical. A natural response. "Because I know too much," I answered simply, dragging up the stuff I was certain was constant between universes. "I know about the Black Panther and the heart-shaped herb. I know that you gained your power from a mountain of vibranium sitting beneath your nation. I know you were the first in space, and that you guys have pride in having never conquered, nor been conquered. I mean, there's more, but that's most of the important stuff." T'Chaka sighed, rubbing his forehead for a long moment, eyes closed in irritation. "I suppose you will be telling your director about this." "I've thought about it," I noted how Io and the servant stiffened, "but I'm as much African as I am American. In the end, I've got respect for you, and for your people. I'd rather you tell them yourself, and you'll have to." "Why is that?" T'Challa asked, glaring at me. "Why should we tell anyone?" "Because you're about to lose your technological advantage," I answered simply. "I'm not going to comment on all the crap that happened in the world that you people could have stopped. Those are the decisions of other kings, and I won't have you answer for that. Not like I can yell at them personally." T'Chaka's lips twitched at that. "But right now, the pragmatic decision is not to simply watch as Bridge accelerates the entire world past you. Being isolationist isn't going to work for long." I stopped to take a sip of tea, trying not to reveal how nervous I was. Damn it, I was giving too many speeches lately. I put it down after a moment. "You turned your back on the rest of the world," I said, my voice taking an odd tone that made T'Challa blink. "But I won't have Bridge do the same. Join us, King T'Chaka. You can try to match our technological abilities, but I guarantee you it won't last. Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, me, all the aliens we hope to make treaties or possibly trade with, Wakanda needs to be a part of the conversation." "And you think the rest of the world will simply let us be?" T'Chaka asked. "Some will not forgive us. Others will attack us, attempt to dominate and manipulate us." "They will," I said. "They're trying to do it to Bridge, to take all the tech we're making, the superhumans we've found, and use them for their own ends. I've even got people making offers for this," I said, tapping the Omnitrix. The servant poured me some more tea. "Thank you, but we are stopping them, fighting them. And in the end, I'm not saying Wakanda has to reveal itself in its entirety right now, just to join us until you're ready." T'Chaka leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. "I see. We would more actively support Bridge, give you our aid, and in return, you allow us to advance our technology alongside yours. Until you reveal yourselves," I added. "That's going to happen. Considering the way the world is going, it's inevitable." T'Chaka shook his head. "You must understand, I've worked all of my life to keep our secret. Killed to keep it. The other tribes will fight this. Then it's up to you." I finished my second cup, chugging it. "I can't speak for your people. I'm only giving you a warning and some advice. There are going to be a lot of benefits. I know you've seen the tech we're making, and it's only going to get crazier and crazier. Wakanda can either join us or be left behind and eventually get found out by a quickly advancing world. I don't want that. I have too much respect for your nation, for the legacy of the Black Panther, and for Wakanda itself. And if we were to offer you something in return for you joining us?" T'Chaka asked. He ignored the stunned looks the others in the room gave him. "Wakanda has many things you might find attractive. Technology, land, even women. What would you want? in trade for you by yourself, allying with Wakanda, advancing us to the point that none in the world can match us for millennia. I scoffed. Even if I didn't think you were just testing me, I made a promise to Bridge, to the world at large, that I'd protect it. T'Chaka smirked. I see. I will speak to my people. T'Challa, my son, what do you think? His son blinked, looking over at me. His mouth opened, then closed, a thoughtful look on his face. When he spoke, it was halting but strong. You are not wrong. If Wakanda is to be safe, we may have to take some risks. But I believe we must also keep our secret, and we may be able for a time to do so. If Shuri, myself, and some of the Dora Milaje join Bridge and the Avengers, then we can help them in trade for technology and resources. With time, we can reveal ourselves or simply allow others to believe our advancements are due to Bridge's technology. It would be more complicated than that, T'Chaka noted. National laws— I know, Father, T'Challa smiled, but I don't believe our young friend is very political. He's not wrong, I said with a grin. I'm trying, believe me, but I'm mostly the punching and shooting guy. T'Chaka chuckled. Very well. You have made your point, my young friend. He rose from his chair. T'Challa and I, following. I will speak to the people of my nation and come to a decision. Depending on what is said, I will speak with Director Maria Hill. I must ask, will you support Wakanda if we require it? Yeah, I reached into a pocket and pulled out a device shaped roughly like a cat, handing it to T'Chaka. Here, this is the Panther's Trail. It gives the location of Ulysses Klaue, no matter where he goes in the world, as well information on the location he hides in, its defense, his resources, so on and so forth. The whole room froze again. Khazra? T'Chaka asked, his voice weak. He can't counter this, no matter what he tries, I said, tapping the device. If you need help, I'm in, and I'll let some of the Avengers know. But if you want to do it on your own, this will help. T'Chaka clenched the device tightly. Thank you for this. Why didn't you simply offer it from the start to trade? I'm no politician, but I figured you wouldn't think of this as worth the trade, I admitted. I noted the looks on their faces. Guess I'd been wrong. Live and learn, I suppose. Live and learn. January 18th. There's a Superman Wonder Woman comic I read once, called Whom Gods Destroy. It was really weird, had Superman turned into a centaur at one point. But there's a line in it that I love that goes something like this. That's the nature of destiny. Some volunteer, others get drafted. Either way, they're all in the fight, and considering the stakes, it's a fight we have to win. Wakanda had its draft notice, courtesy of me. Now it was up to them to accept or pretend they had bone spurs. Might have lost the metaphor. Point was, the ball was in their court. In the meantime, I had a job to do. So then, he taught me how to punch people for 3 hours while yelling at me about protocol, I told Hawkeye as we walked on a rooftop the next day, telling him about how Steve had punished me the day before for running off with Bruce. Clint laughed. The two of us were in the middle of Manhattan listening to police bands and Foo Fighters. The Pretender was coming out of my bubble speaker, the device Jury Rig had made for me weeks back. Well, he's right, Clint said with a grin. You kinda went off without a plan, didn't you? I winced. Bet you didn't even know that would work. I winced again. How close was the Hulk to taking your head off before you transformed? I winced one last time, sighing. I made a guess. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone, you know. Mahmoud, Clint sighed. You need to think things through. You've got more power in that watch than anyone I've seen who wasn't named Thor. But you can't just go off for no reason, man. You've got a team to look after, and to help look after you. You ain't patrolling alone anymore. As a super spy, I can personally attest to how important having backup is, Clint said, putting emphasis on super. I sighed, nodding. I'd gotten used to being on a team the past few days, but I still tended to think of myself fighting on my own. But even Ben, with 6 years of experience fighting the likes of Vilgax, Animeu, Kevin, Agregor and everything else in the universe, had depended on Kevin, Gwen, Rook and others to have his back. As I was thinking about that, the police band on our comms flared. Fire on Eastern Parkway and Buffalo Avenue in Brownsville, the address is. The woman on the radio rattled off the number over the radio as I activated the Omnitrix and Hawkeye turned on his armor. The suit that came across him was very similar to Bobby's, with a purple coloration to it. Interestingly, he'd chosen a helmet that looked a lot like the one from his 616 counterpart's Ronin costume. A cloak came across his body as well, flowing around him to wind that didn't exist. This is Hawkeye and Dial of the Avengers. We're on it. Say again, came the response from a likely very confused dispatcher. Hawkeye leaped off the building as I pushed down the Omnitrix and went astrodactyl. Hawkeye's cloak snapped out into a large glider, allowing him to float down until I got to him and grabbed his shoulders by my foot talons. In seconds, we were shooting through the air towards Brooklyn, flying past office buildings under to the speed of sound so we didn't shatter windows with sonic booms. Even with me modulating my speed, it didn't take long to reach the fire. Hawkeye, on seeing the flames, waved up at me, speaking over comms since the wind would have drowned him out otherwise. Go in the top floor and drop me over there. Clint pointed at the top of a nearby building. Got it, Squawk. I fired an energy blast at one of the windows and flew in, letting go of Hawkeye, who glided to land on the building he'd chosen on the way. As I flew inside, an arrow tipped with a bulbous canister flew past me. My feet hit the carpeted floor at the same time as the arrow hit. Hawkeye's arrow exploded outwards in a burst of foam that spread across the flame-filled room, covering me and everything else in the chilly white bubbles. The flames were instantly extinguished, and I tapped the Omnitrix. Fast track! I ran through the hallway with all of my speed, noting the arrow flying through windows and the various holes created by the fire, exploding into more foam, covering desks, bookshelves and beds around us with the foam, all the arrows moving in slow motion to my enhanced speed. I slowed down slightly as Hawkeye spoke over comms, the light of the Omnitrix on chest flashing with each word. Got 3 people in a closet in the next room to the left. Older woman and 2 kids, he told me. When the Avengers had chosen their new armor, Clint had gone for every audio and visual enhancement he could get. In moments like this, he'd be the eyes in the sky, while using his bow to snipe and aid. I ran into the room he indicated and opened the closet, looking down at the elderly Asian women clutching tightly to a pair of young children, one girl slightly older looking than the other. "Hi," I said with a smile. "Sorry I can't be more polite." Before they said anything, I picked 3 of them up and ran for the stairs, moving past the people already escaping, rushing the 3 out to the sidewalk and running back in. One guy, stumbling on the 2nd floor. I picked that guy up, a young Hispanic man, and rushed him out as more arrows landed around me. I've got 2 on the top floor trying to run to the roof. It was a white couple, young and panicking. I picked them up and rushed them out as well, the sidewalk getting full. Over and over, as Hawkeye fired his fire suppression arrows, and I picked people up, we emptied out the building. My fur was slightly singed, but not much considering my natural toughness and speed, and Clint firing suppression foam to keep the worst of the blaze contained until the fire department arrived. Finally, only one person was left. "It's a kid," Hawkeye said calmly. "She's hiding under a bed, 3rd floor, middle room on the right." "Got it?" I said, running into that room and bending down to look under the bed. A young black girl stared at me, clutching a stuffed blue T-Rex to her chest in the shadows as flames roared behind me, illuminating her tearful face. "Hey, sweetie," I said softly, wondering where the hell her parents were. Had I taken them already? Worry later? She was crying, covering her eyes to avoid looking at me. "Hey, it's okay. I'm an Avenger. You know them, right?" Still crying, her eyes clenched tight, she nodded. "Daddy doesn't like them." "Oh, the hell do I do now?" "Well, I promise I won't hurt you. I'm just going to take you out of the fire." "Okay, then you can be with your parents." She looked at me. I reached a hand out and smiled as reassuringly as a blue-furred alien can. Must have been enough, because as hesitantly as she did it, she still slowly reached a hand out to hold mine. I helped out from under the bed, tucking the small child into my arms and turned to leave. Of course, that was when the stairs collapsed. Yeesh, the building was seriously not up to code. Huh, I blinked at that. Sweetie, hold tight. I think I'm going to make my own exit. She nodded, the tiny thing tucking her face into my fur and holding her stuffed T-Rex close. I smiled at that, then reached for the Omnitrix. I entertained the idea of turning into 4 arms before dismissing it. Better to keep him a secret for as long as possible. Plus, his strength and size might end up destroying the building due to how weak the building was. I'd go for strength without going overboard. I tapped the Omnitrix, transforming into something tough and strong enough to tear a hole in the building without hurting the child. Wrath. The little girl seemed to find the sudden thicker fur of my new form comfortable. I gave her a fond smile, then bent my legs, holding in my typical bombastic personality as Wrath to keep from scaring her. With explosive force, I leaped upwards, crashing through the ceiling. The girl screamed, tiny right hand clutching at my fur and left hand holding her T-Rex close. I landed on the roof and jumped one more, landing on the sidewalk in front of the building, causing only minor cracks in the sidewalk, people leaping away from me and screaming in surprise at the giant tiger man coming out of the sky. Fire trucks had shown up, staring at the foam-covered building as they moved quickly to douse the remaining fire, water beginning to fall onto the crowd as they sprayed the building. I felt some water drip on me and held in a growl of annoyance. Wrath didn't like water. Hawkeye came gliding to join me as I looked around. I noticed the phones filming me, but ignored them. Listen up, Wrath wants to know whose cub this is. I raised her high over my head to make sure everyone in the crowd saw her, and she could look for her parents. The girl looked around, rubbing at the tears on her chubby cheeks. That's my daughter, a black woman cried out, rushing away from EMTs to come over to me. She had tear tracks going through the sit on her cheeks as she rushed forward. She hesitated for the barest moment when she realized just what was holding her daughter. Mummy, the little girl wiggled in my grip. I gently put her down and she rushed for her mother, who hugged her, the two crying openly. I smiled at that as Hawkeye came over to join me. It was heartwarming. Get down on the ground. The heartwarming moment was shattered when someone yelled at me. I blinked, turning to look. A cop was pointing his gun at me. For a moment, we all stared at the guy. No? I said, confused. Wrath just helped everyone. Wrath is starting to wonder if you're dumb, and that's saying something coming from Wrath. I finished bombastically. People in the crowd giggled nervously. Hawkeye tapped his chest, his armor turning into his quiver. Officer, we're Avengers. Please put your
Hawkeye.
dial, Maria said suddenly. We just got a message from a former S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist by the name of Bill Foster. He's asking to be pulled in with an asset, and you two are the closest to him. I'm sending in a Quinjet. A Quinjet, one of the newer models, dropped out of the sky just a few moments after that message, hovering into the street and opening its back doors as people shouted and pointed. Axe tells us Hydra is after them. Hawkeye and I shared a fast look then, turned and ran for the Quinjet. I said, freeze, the nervous cop yelled, shooting me in the back. I ignored the bullet that bounced off me, leaping into the Quinjet and turning to look out. Wrath is going to go fight Hydra. Stay beautiful, New York. I raised my fists in the air, the Quinjet closing as cameras stayed on me, and a laughing Hawkeye. That building there, the Quinjet pilot Maria had sent, said. Apparently, he'd been on his way to the helicarrier and had been moved to pick Hawkeye and me up instead. He pointed at a warehouse next to the harbor where another 3 Quinjets, Hydra, were parked by the docks. Our Quinjet's cloaking was keeping us hidden for now. We were hundreds of feet above the building in question and still heading to it. Okay, swing over those Quinjets, Hawkeye said, his bow shifting as he moved towards the back of the Quinjet, with me following quickly. You want me to lower down, sir? The pilot called back at Clint. Nah, I'm good. Clint lifted his purple bow and clenched his hand around the grip. When enough pressure was put on it, the bow's catoms moved and flowed, more moving from the quiver on his back to add to it, making the overall bow thicker and longer, increasing its poundage. He picked an arrow tipped with a 3-pronged hook from his quiver and pulled back on the bowstring as the Quinjet's back door opened up, aiming for the enemy Quinjets when we passed over them. So, you think you'll take up archery? I'm thinking about it, I admitted, watching him. He fired 3 times, seriously, That was how it felt. As though the motion of picking out an arrow, knocking it, pulling on the bow and firing was all as fast as though he'd simply been firing a gun. Damn, all 3 Quinjets had been hit at the exact point where the power could most easily be interfered with, and the arrows sent catoms flooding through them, the tiny robots transforming to eat at a 3-foot radius from their point of entry. "Let me know if you ever want lessons," Hawkeye said with a grin. The Quinjet flew toward the warehouse and landed in front of it. I leaped out and landed on the ground. "I'll keep an eye out," Hawkeye yelled. I nodded, then activated the Omnitrix. Hawkeye's armor flowed back over him, turning him once more into an intimidatingly cloaked and armored being. He pointed his arm at a nearby building and tapped his fingers to his palm. A line shot out, the end tipped in a chemical based on Goop's adhesive, the end attaching. The powerful motor on the other end reeled in the line, shooting Hawkeye towards the roof. As he left, so did I. I ran into the warehouse through a door that had been blown off its hinges while activating the Omnitrix. "Fast track. There's a man being chased through one of the hallways," Hawkeye said. "That will be Bill Foster. I've got him. You want to focus on Ava Starr. She's the enhanced Hydra's after." I heard the twang of a bow firing several times. Foster's headed to the extraction point. Looks like Ava was distracting the other soldiers. She's down the hall in a big room. She's fighting centipede soldiers along with the normal Hydra's assholes. I'm giving her support. Got it? In seconds, I was down the hall and looking at a big room filled with crates. One of the doors was open, revealing the river outside the warehouse and giving the whole room the smell of the murky river. Soldiers were standing around pointing at a crate with their guns, right up until an exploding arrow slammed into one's chest, piercing through the metal roof to make the shot. Boom. More arrows fly in, scattering the forces. I grabbed a soldier running by me and punched him a bunch of times in the chest, turning his ribs into dust, then rushing to the crate they'd been pointing at. Figuring this was where Ava was hiding, I ran around to get to her, only to blink at the sight. Ava was Ghost. Except Ghost in the comics was a man. I mean, she had the same costume and everything, but she was clearly a woman. Pushing away my brief confusion, I waved at the white-helmeted woman. "Hi, I'm Dial." I winced at how cheesy that sounded. "Want to get out of here?" "Look out," she yelled, pointing behind me. Time slowed from my speedy perspective. I turned to see a centipede soldier coming out of the smoke, aiming to wrap his arms around me. I stepped into his grasp with my hands raised and started hitting him. Damn, felt like punching steel. I bashed him in the chest as fast as I could, jabs, uppercuts and hooks, until I felt a couple of my knuckles split from the constant meeting of my fists to enhanced flesh covered in metal. When he went flying back, I tried to smirk to make Ava feel less nervous. "Yeah, got to hit these guys a lot to cause any damage." I turned to her. "Come on." She got up and I quickly swept her into my arms. I ran out to the extraction point, slipping around soldiers with ease and keeping myself moving until we were outside. Suddenly, Eva did something, turning into the ghost that gave her her code name. She went through my arms, falling to the floor. "What just happened?" she yelled up at me as I blinked in surprise. "Did you just—" Ava, the two of us looked up at the Quinjet parked in front of the warehouse, the back open. I found myself staring because inside was Lawrence Fishburne, the guy who'd played one of my favorite characters in one of my favorite standalone movies ever, because it had never gotten a sequel. I watched as Ava ran into the Quinjet, hugging Bill Foster. "Ah, Morpheus. That's cool." With that, I ran back into the warehouse as the Quinjet took off into the sky. Inside, Hawkeye had pretty much finished most of the infantry who were running out towards the Quinjets, leaving 30 of their people behind. The centipede soldiers were still up and fighting, though 6 of them left. I entered the warehouse and tapped the Omnitrix, turning into someone a little stronger. Blitzwolfer. In my werewolf-like form, I towered over the men and women around me. One of the centipede soldiers stepped forward to punch at me. I blocked it on my forearm and punched her in the face, dropping her to the ground. 2 others rushing me got a quick sonic blast that sent them flying into crates, wood shattering under their bulk. A hit to my lower back got a grunt of pain from me. I turned to see a tall man who backflipped to hit me in the muzzle. I stumbled back as two other centipede soldiers stepped in to punch me in the stomach. "Enough!" I roared. Sonic blasted, sending all three flying. As they fell to the floor, I jumped on top of one and punched him in the face, knocking him out, blocked another as he rolled up to kick at me and clawed his chest, leaving deep line across it. I roared once more, my sonic blast destroying crates behind the guy as he flew back into a wall, denting it massively. Then I tapped the Omnitrix symbol on my chest. Goop. Flying above the room, I spun at high speed and started firing pieces of myself at the soldiers still on the floor and the female one who'd just started to stand back up. I flowed through the room in my spinning form, adhesive goop slamming into the centipede soldiers until they were all struggling to fight out of the powerful grip of the green slime surrounding their bodies. I stopped and shifted to my bipedal form to look around. The female centipede soldier, apparently thinking she'd snuck up on me, swung her fist into my back, coming out the other side in a splash of green liquid. I shifted my body, my head and limbs going the other way, so I was facing her. Her blank face looked up at me. "Rude," I said from the floating anti-gravity projector above my goop form. I flowed around and surrounded her, soaking her in my adhesive form, then moved away to leave her in a pile of adhesive. She struggled, left unable to move in the makeshift bonds I'd created. For a moment, the room was quiet, except for the sounds of centipede soldiers fighting to escape. I noted how none of them really had expressions. It was kinda creepy. Even movie zombies at least growled or something. These guys and girls simply stared at me. "All done?" I shifted my body to look at Hawkeye in his full armor, who shivered at the way my fluid body moved. "Seriously, that is crazy looking." "Sorry," I said in the robotic voice from my projector. In a flash of green light, I turned back into my human form. "Well, we have prisoners now, right?" Suddenly, one of the centipede soldiers began to scream. Hawkeye ran to him, leaning down. "Shit, they're trying to activate the kill switch in their eyes." It was something Coulson's team had told us about. All centipede soldiers had some useful upgrades, among them a slick eye implant that let them see through walls, but it was also able to be used to kill the soldier. The ultimate way to keep your soldier from being interrogated was to simply kill them. "Jarvis," Hawkeye yelled. "I'm stopping them," Jarvis said to us over comms. "But their programming has been upgraded from what Sky and Fisk have told us. I'm pulling in X to help." More centipede soldiers began to scream until all 6 of those awake were wailing in pain. Others, the ones Ava and Hawkeye had killed or knocked out, started to shake before going still. I tried to think of some way to help. Brute strength was off the table. Jury rig would take too long, so in a quick turn of the Omnitrix, I flipped through my Omnitrix's menu. In that time, 2 soldiers died, their right eyes twisting around in their sockets. I pushed the Omnitrix down and transformed. My skin became inky black with green circuitry. Upgrade. I leaped towards the female soldier, my body slipping into her eye as she screeched in horror and pain. "Oh my God," Hawkeye yelled, the sight of my massive nanite form flowing into a woman through her right eye, apparently surprising him. As the last of me entered with a slurp slurp sound, he held a hand over where his mouth would be under his helmet. "I'm going to be sick." I ignored him, instead joining with the woman's implant. It was the work of a quick thought to disconnect her from her handler's network. I flowed through the rest of her only to meet with something interesting. She had other nanotechnology in her body, and it was angry. Where I had been thinking of myself as a fluid being, I was suddenly split into millions of tiny bodies, battling nano-sized beings that were constantly rewriting the woman's genetic code, giving her some of her superhuman strength and healing. They were also fucking crazy. If it wasn't for the strange makeup of her body, she would have started exploding at some point. As it was, her platelets had been modified to stop herself from doing that. The nanotech, obviously extremists, tried to attack my form, tearing at me. I took the blows and absorbed them, shifting them into becoming a part of me. I flowed through her into the centipede device and winced mentally at the feel of the gamma radiation within it. Seriously, with the way her body had been set up, she'd soon self-destruct without constant maintenance. I didn't have time to fix it, however. The surviving centipede soldiers were dying. Once I took over her form, I connected to the wireless unit that had been trying to kill her, piggybacking onto it and connecting with the surviving soldiers, Jarvis moving aside to allow me in. One more man died in that time. Then I disconnected them from the wireless, leaving the women connected. I flowed into that link, Jarvis joining with me as we bounced through the internet, chasing our opponent. They tried to fight us, but I went through it. Just before I could find it, we received a message. A message that had been sent to someone on the other side. With some work, I realized I'd hacked the email of one of the centipede soldiers' handlers. The soldiers were being controlled, and the people controlling them were In the millisecond it took to read it, I changed tactics. Shit, they're dying, I said, sending malfunction reports, moving a portion of my body off the woman's shoulder to look around. Hawkeye stared at me, giving the clearly alive centipede soldiers a look. Go with it, sir, Jarvis sent him. Well, stop them, Hawkeye yelled, moving to take a man's pulse. I'm trying, I yelled dramatically, rereading the message. Once I knew what I had, Jarvis moved with me, calling out for X. Soon the three of us had gotten everything. Some of the volunteers had been hired, but most were former computer technicians and such, normal people. They'd been pulled in using what Hydra called the incentives program. Blackmail. What we found was a series of images of people, women, men, children, all locked in rooms, some crying, some angry or confused. They all had guns aimed at them. Over each image was something simple, each personalized, each horrific. If you do not follow our orders, we will kill them. You want to see your wife again, don't you? Do as we say, or we'll kill your son. Hostages. They were threatening to kill hostages in return for someone to help them. I pulled back, furious. If I went too far, then I'd end up getting innocents killed. I needed to work around Hydra. We needed to find the facilities they were being held in first. Hill had to hear about this. I sent false reports of the centipede soldiers with us dying to the kill switch in their eyes before pulling back into the woman. I concentrated on her for a bit, first used the Extremis nanotechnology to heal her, then pulled the cybernetics out of her, Extremis repairing her organs and right eye back as I removed the machinery connected to them. The centipede device and backscatter eye implant were joined to me. I left her body through her eyes. In seconds, I was standing in front of her. She gave me a shuddering look. Then she passed out. As she slumped within Goop's green adhesive, I focused on the Extremis nanotech, centipede implant, and the backscatter eye implant that were part of me, spitting them onto the floor. That was gross, Hawkeye stated, likely a little green under his helmet. We have issues, I said, trying to show how I wasn't even sure what the hell I'd just done. We need to talk to the director. Avastar, Ghost. The woman known as Ghost was being hugged tightly to her adoptive father as they waited in a room together. She hadn't truly felt the need to hug or be hugged by him on most days, but this felt necessary. They'd been taken to a helicarrier, a massive flying ship that was currently floating above the Avengers Tower. Apparently it was called the Enterprise, something that her father had found funny. Ava sighed, looking at him. How long do we have to wait? She asked, indicating the white room they were waiting in, 2 chairs and a simple table being the only things inside. She winced as the constant pain that always filled her flared for a moment. She was still wearing her ghost suit, though she'd removed her helmet. But the ghost suit really didn't help as much anymore to prevent the pain. I don't know, Ava Bill said, giving her a soft look, but Fury promised to try and help us. To help you. Was that before or after S.H.I.E.L.D. turned out to be Hydra? Eva asked, her voice becoming vicious. Bill winced, his arms tightening around his daughter. After technically, they offered me my old job, I think, with their resources. Who's to say they won't just keep doing what they were before? Ava went intangible, moving away from her father to stand in the center of the room, just turning me into a weapon, feeding me lines about they'll help me. Ava, Bill said, standing up as well. You know it's true, Ava shouted, spinning to glare at him. Why did you call them? Why didn't we just escape? What if they just keep using us? Before he could respond, the door to the room opened. A woman, tall and fit, wearing a blue jumpsuit with her black hair done up, strode inside. Behind her was a young man. He was slightly shorter than the woman was, with dark skin calling to an Arabian or possibly Indian heritage, long hair pulled back into a ponytail and short, scruffy beard, his large bare arms revealed by the Iron Man t-shirt he was wearing. The woman smiled at the pair. I'm not planning on doing any such thing, she said simply. Ava and Bill shared a look. Who are you? Ava asked coldly. I'm Maria Hill, director of Bridge, Maria said, crossing her arms behind her back and gesturing to the man behind her. And this is Mahmoud Shahid, Dial of the Reserve Avengers. Reserve? Bill asked, curiosity in his voice. We're thinking about a name change, the young man said. Smiling, he had a dimple in his right cheek when he smiled, something that made him look even younger. I thought we were meeting Nick Fury, Ava said. He's in the midst of picking up someone we are considering under threat, Maria said. That said, I can help you with any concerns you have. And if we just leave? Ava asked. Ava? Bill said softly. No, I want to know. Ava felt her body twist through existence, unable to stay together through her agitation. What if I don't want your help? Maria looked over at Mahmoud. He looked out of his depth. After a moment, he shrugged. Maria turned around, frowning before speaking. We'd want to at least some way to contact you, and you would have to sign a contract promising not to use your paws to hurt others or for ill gain, with the understanding that such actions will result in Bridge coming after you. Bridge? Bill asked. Bureau of Reconnaissance, Intelligence, Development and General Enhancement, Mahmoud explained. We really wanted to spell Bridge, he finished sheepishly. Ava ignored that. You just let us go. No, Maria said with a frown. The fact is, your powers are unique. Others might try to find you the way Hydra did, try to kill or use you, but you would be allowed to refuse any help we might offer. All we do is keep an eye on you to keep you safe and keep you from causing harm with your powers. Ava scowled, stepping forward. Mahmoud, to her surprise, stepped forward as well. For a moment, Ava met eyes with the brown-skinned man across from her, noting his nerdy shirt, ridiculous backpack, and bright green watch. He looked like a geek. A muscular geek, but a geek. But he was simply meeting her eyes, not flinching, as she felt her body tear itself over and over, shifting her around into flickering images. How about you see what we want to do to help you? Maria offered. Ava looked over at her, which Maria seemed to take as acceptance. We're pulling experts on quantum mechanics in and have some of our people studying your machine, Maria said, looking at Dr. Foster. We've actually made some headway into that. Using quantum batteries, Mahmoud said. It's something we made for our equipment. We'll be able to plug you into the quantum realm. We're just dealing with something unexpected, but Tony Stark, that is, says he's confident we can help you. And what do you want in return? Dr. Foster asked, the older man crossing his arms. I won't do anything that hurts Ava, especially if you keep forcing her to kill. Maria crossed her arms, sighing. Well, I'd hoped to possibly invite her to join the Avengers. Not happening, Ava spat out, shifting briefly around the room. I'm done. Then I suppose we'll simply do our best to cure you. Maria looked at Dr. Foster. Will you be accepting our offer of employment, Doctor? Bill seemed surprised. What would that entail? Working with our research and development team to help us with some of our projects, Maria said. We are interested in your knowledge on PIM particles, of course, especially since we've had no luck contacting Hank Pymbe. Maria raised an eyebrow when Dr. Foster's fist clenched. Ava scowled at the name of the man who had ruined her biological father's life. Well, more that he refuses to talk to us. For now, your insight could be invaluable. The older man rubbed his chin, sighing slightly. Ava? She looked around. The man, Mahmoud, was eyeing her calmly. Seriously, this guy was an Avenger? Maria was just as relaxed, while her adoptive father was simply waiting for her response. In truth, she had no idea what to think. A shield, Hydra, bridge.
What was the difference?
She'd spent years being led by false promises, killing people, giving up pieces of her soul for the mere chance to get rid of the pain that had plagued her since childhood. But some part of her wanted to reach out and take another chance. Just once more. Only if Dr. Foster is there, Ava said, still glaring at Mahmoud as she spoke to Maria. Bill looked between Ava and Mahmoud before sighing. Okay, then we're in. Great, Mahmoud said with a smile. Excellent, Ava replied more coldly. They kept eyeing each other. Mahmoud apparently confused. Ava wasn't sure what she disliked about him. Maybe it was the careless way he carried himself, as though he'd never faced real issues. Maybe it was the way he was clearly challenging her. But he rubbed her the wrong way. Mahmoud Shahid Dada. What the hell was her problem? I grumbled after meeting Ava Starr and Bill Foster. What should have been a cool moment, meeting Goliath as played by Morpheus, had been ruined by Ava's hostility. And the thing is, I wasn't sure what I'd done wrong. At one point she'd stepped forward as though about to attack, and I'd stepped forward to intercept. And it was as though she'd never been so insulted. It wasn't like she hated me, I guess. More that I was the sort of person who she couldn't get along with. I just didn't get it. And I tend to be the sort of person who obsesses when people dislike me. I can't help it. It's a flaw that doesn't come up often, but if someone ends up disliking me, I tend to obsess about it for years after, resenting them. Imply I'm stupid, unfunny, annoying, whatever it is, I'll think about it for the rest of my life. It ain't attractive, and I try to do better, but right then, trying wasn't helping. I was musing on this in my room during my downtime. Trying to push the thought away, I looked around for something to get my mind off it. My eyes panned to the video game system and TV, and I thought about seeing what video games were like in a Stark-designed world. Then I dismissed it. After the Omnitrix, I just couldn't see much interesting about video games, at least not right then. I turned on the TV anyway, switching it to the news, then grabbed my bridge issue tablet and powered it up as I paced. I had some messages waiting already, Sky reminding me of my appointment to make her armor and hang out. The contract from Stark Industries' merchandising department I had to sign, mostly to use my image, aliens and property in their products, which I read slowly before signing. Fitzsimmons had finished their new machine, and the Claytronic maker was officially in working order. After a frustrated moment, I tossed aside the tablet and laid back against the couch. It was supposed to be my downtime, but I couldn't think of anything to do and everyone else was busy. Fuck it. I got up and went to the window, reaching for the Omnitrix when there was a knock on the door. I stared at the door for a moment, then back outside the window where New York awaited. Another knock at the door came. I sighed and turned away from the window, walking towards the door and opening it. Clint, Creel, Bucky, Sam, Steve, and Tony were standing there, all of them holding paper bags. I blinked. Hey guys, what's up? Sup? Clint pushed his way inside, the others following. I heard you were moping in your room. I wasn't moping, I grumbled, watching as the superheroes and former supervillains strode into my room. What's going on? Movie night, Tony said cheerily, the billionaire holding bags full of junk food. Well, day, I guess. Hill gave us a few hours to relax, so we came down here. You don't mind, do you? Steve asked, concerned. I didn't know they were springing this on you, Steve gave Tony and Clint a glare. Both men grinned at him as they put down the food they'd brought. No, I don't mind, I said, deciding to go with the flow. Good, because I'm getting drunk, Creel said, heading towards my kitchen. Can't, Sam called out to him. We've still got to get back to work after this. Plus, I don't have alcohol, I said, grinning at the disappointed look on Creel's face. I walked to my couch and sat on the floor, leaning back against it. What are we watching? Frankenstein, Alien and the Thing, Bucky answered with a grin. The former Winter Soldier seemed to be almost trying a bit awkwardly to have fun, sitting down on the couch with more energy than required, but none of us commented on it. Jarvis, Tony said, grabbing a bag of barbecue chips. Already playing, sir, the AI said. Soon we were watching classic horror movies together. I looked around and found myself grinning. It's good to have friends. Samuel Stearns, the leader. In his lab, Stearns worked carefully, putting the final touches on the chemical he'd been putting together for the past few minutes. As he worked with the blue liquid, John Garrett walked into the room. "Hey, big head," Garrett said jauntily. "All done?" Stearns held in his anger. Garrett was rude, uncouth, and useless. The only use he had, as far as Stearns could tell, was that he had men under his command. The Aedra leaders had some sort of use, but Stearns only held his control with great discipline, an easy task for a genius of his caliber, and something Garrett didn't deserve. "Yes, I believe I am." Stearns looked up as another person walked into the room. "Young Rayner, you have the final component?" "Yes, Dr. Stearns," Rayner said with a bright smile. The young black woman wearing a pretty silk blue dress with flowers all across it. "You sweet-talking my girl, Stearns?" Garrett asked with a grin as Rayner handed Stearns a blue vial. Stearns held in his thoughts on that. "Rayner has been helping me. She really has quite the gift for genetics." Stearns poured the contents of the blue vial in with other chemicals. "Sadly, synthesizing this has been quite difficult, and some of the versions I've created broke down, but this is the final and completed serum. Thankfully for you, I've gained quite a bit of experience in alien genetics recently." Stearns poured all of it into a glass and handed it to Garrett. "Go ahead and drink that." "What? Just like that?" Garrett eyed the blue fluid within the glass. "I thought it would be a bit more complex. Although I do like that one of my fellow Death Cult members is handing me Kool-Aid." "Yes, very quaint," Stearns sighed. "Now please leave." Garrett blinked at Stearns. "Thought you'd be more excited about this stuff, Stearns. You know this Jesus juice can bring the dead back to life, right?" The Gamma-enhanced genius smirked. "Yes, I do. And while I'm sure less intellectual minds would find that interesting, I foresee far better things in my research." After a moment, the other man shrugged before drinking the blue liquid. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Garrett gasped, his back twisting as he stumbled. Rayner and Stearns watched him calmly as he fell to his knees, eyes wide. What is this?" "Power, I suppose," Stearns said simply. "With Dr. Stearns' help, I've been able to make incredible progress in my research," Rayner added with a sweet, cold smile. "With all of the enhancements already in your body." Stearns turned and walked away, leaving Garrett to heal. Rayner followed. As the Gamma-enhanced genius walked through the halls, he could hear Garrett laughing deliriously in the background. All according to plan. When Stearns had realized that there was a sort of genetic memory in the blood of whatever alien the vials Garrett had given came from, he'd come upon a plan. Garrett was an issue. For all of his crudeness, he had men and resources that he'd allowed Strucker to use. Garrett gave Strucker manpower that the leader of Hydra wouldn't otherwise have. But if Garrett became so obsessed that he decided to cut ties with Strucker, well, Stearns hadn't had to work very hard to make sure the serum he'd given Garrett would give him an extra dose of the genetic memories within them. "Rayner," Stearns said, as they walked together. "Yes, Doctor?" Rayner asked politely. "Is Project Blood Diamond ready?" "Of course," Rayner said, following Stearns through the castle. "The subject is now under our control, and the crystals have been placed in the particle infusion chamber. She's been injected with the purified serum you created, though I should warn you we had to use the only one you created." "Wonderful," Stearns said with a smile. "Do you know the story of how Hydra obtained her?" "They found her in Mexico, right?" Rayner asked. Stearns chuckled. "Yes, they did, and that was when Hydra came into conflict with another organization. When Hydra took her, this organization attacked them. Now, I haven't found any records of what that group was called, but they followed this young woman wherever Hydra hid her, calling her Black Sky. Hydra and this organization killed each other across America, all over her." Rayner stared at him, surprised. Why did this organization stop? In an ingenious maneuver, Hydra faked her death in an explosion. Stearns smiled. "But make no mistake. If this organization is still around and they find that she is alive, I do believe they would do anything they could to capture her." The pair walked into a room. Inside, the subject of their conversation was sitting placidly on a bed as scientists roamed around her. "Are you ready, my dear?" Stearns asked the blank-faced girl. She'd changed since he'd last seen her. Still thin, almost painfully so, but her once matted black hair was now clean and combed. She wore white patient's clothes and looked up at Stearns. Stearns noted that, unlike others, she didn't seem to notice his massively enlarged head, only meeting his eyes placidly. "Estoy feliz de cumplir," the young woman said. "Ah, my dear girl," Stearns said fondly, shaking his head. "Such a sweetheart now. Please," he gestured to the large grey metal tube that had opened up to reveal a space large enough to sit in. "Enter the chamber." Without hesitation, the girl rose up and walked over to it, standing inside and lying back as the 3 large rectangular lights on either side of her glowed within the chamber. "Are you sure this will work?" Rayner asked. When Stearns scowled at the perceived insult, she hurried to continue. "I trust your calculations, Doctor, but it seems fantastic." Stearns slowly softened.
Yes, I suppose it does.
"But the chamber has been tested before, and I believe now we have found the perfect material to make use of, and a subject most likely to survive the process." Strucker came through the door then, followed as always by Rana Williams in her aberration form. Stearns held in a sigh of disappointment at the sight of Rana being so loyal. What a waste. Such beautiful power all wasted in servitude to each their own. "Excited, Strucker?" Stearns asked as the chamber closed around the young girl within it. "In many ways, yes," Strucker admitted. "I was first put on this project by Whitehall himself. While Creel was quite the success, his abilities were far too temporary for our tastes. Seeing what you make here will be interesting." For once, Stearns didn't feel distaste towards Strucker. In this, both men were in total agreement. While Strucker could never match the incredible brilliance and magnificent intellect within Stearns, he was still a scientist. "I suppose we should begin," Stearns said with a smile. 100%. 100, sir?" the black-haired scientist at the massive cube device next to the chamber asked, shocked. "Did he stutter?" Strucker said with a frown. No, sir." The scientist leaned down, his face distressed, and began to activate it. The grey cube held all the materials they'd chosen within, ready to be used for the process. Stearns looked into the window on the chamber, where the girl was staring out calmly. "Now, according to all our research, a person who is already enhanced will more easily accept further enhancements." "Rayner, why do you believe that is?" The young woman smiled. "Because their genetics are more capable of withstanding and healing side effects." A crude answer. Stearns felt disappointed, but he easily hid it with fake pride. "Indeed, my dear." Rayner smiled, easily fooled. Stearns had her pegged. She wanted to be special, to become someone with power and beauty. Rayner's sin was greed. It made her dangerous, but it also made her easy to draw into the influence of others. All Stearns needed was time with her. He put away that thought to focus on the particle infusion chamber. The panels behind the device began to glow. "I am saddened we lost our original choice for this experiment," Strucker said. "But losing Ruby Hale and gaining this young woman may have been to our advantage." "Does she even have a name?" Rana asked, standing next to Rayner. Despite their similar names, the two couldn't have been more different, Rana towering over the smaller woman. Strucker said, adjusting his monocle. "I'm not sure." Suddenly, the girl within the chamber grimaced, gritting her teeth. Rayner frowned, sharing a glance Stearns, who simply smiled. The girl shouted, then roared, a surprisingly intimidating sound. Strucker stepped forward with a fascinated look in his eyes. "How much?" Stearns asked the scientist at the controls. 59% infusion, the man yelled, with far more emotion than Stearns really felt was necessary for what amounted to a medical procedure. The girl shouted again, eyes snapping open. As they watched, her eyes began to change color. "Is that supposed to happen?" Rana asked, the gamma-enhanced woman staring. "It's the DNA of the material imposing itself," Stearns said calmly. "How much?" "It's accelerating. 70, 80, 100%. That's all of it." The lights across the machine shut down, the panels behind it turning off as well. The chamber opened and the girl was revealed. She was panting, her chest heaving as she sweated, soaking her clothes. The thin young woman stared around angrily, hissing, Rana still in her monstrous form, stepping in front of Strucker, only for him to shake his head and step forward. The girl's eyes glowed a bright yellow. No, they didn't glow. It was more like they'd become that way. They had turned into smooth topaz-like gems, the light making them glitter. "Show us," Strucker said softly. "Show us what you can do." She twisted her wrists. From each hand, in between pinky and ring finger, and her middle finger and index finger, 4 blue-green crystals shot out, 2 for each hand. They were shaped like curved blades, claws of crystal. The girl grunted in pain as blood poured from the holes. The claws ripped in her hands to come out, but didn't seem too bothered otherwise, the bleeding stopping almost immediately as the wounds healed around the claws. She focused once more, and a ripping sound was heard as she stumbled out of the chamber. From her back, shoulders, and along her arms, more crystals sprouted, piercing her skin and ripping at her clothes. She closed her eyes, and all the crystals pulled back except the ones in her hands, leaving her clothes to flutter to the ground as she stared at them with calm eyes. All the holes in her skin sealed, then healed over in moments. "Incredible," Strucker said, gently removing his coat and stepping forward. He eyed the blood on her body and claws before chuckling. "Truly," he said, putting his coat around the girl, "you are a blood diamond." The girl stared blankly, her claws glittering in the light as topaz-colored gems gazed upon them. "Oh my God," Steve yelled in horror as we watched a snake-like creature burst from John Hurt's chest. The super soldier yelled again, ignoring Tony laughing at him. "Whoa," Bucky said, blinking as the crew of the Nostromo screamed in horror at the sight of their friend giving what I've heard described as violent chest birth. "How awesome is that?" I yelled, grinning at the reactions of Bucky and Steve. "And you guys thought it wouldn't be scary?" I thought about mentioning how the actors' fear was real since the directors had never told them what was going to happen, but that was better told after the movie, to make it better for a second watch. Steve continued to stare, eyes wide with shock. Bucky only shook his head, not as shocked, but still looking surprised. "Guess everyone reacts differently to the chestburster scene." We'd watched Frankenstein already, of course, so Alien had been the obvious next film. As Steve and Bucky continued to watch, though, I realized eyes were on me. I looked around. Creel, Sam, Tony, and Clint were all staring at me. No, wait, they were staring at the Omnitrix. A sigh left my lips as I rolled my eyes. "I told you there are no xenomorphs in the Omnitrix." "Oh yeah, but there are Frankenstein aliens," Creel pointed out smugly. "I'm with Mr. Periodic Table over there. I'm not taking your word for it," Tony said with a grunt. "Barton told us about you going into that lady's eye." "Her eye was cybernetic," I complained, leaning away from the couch to look at a disgusted Tony. "It's just how Upgrade works." Bucky stared at me, his robotic arm very carefully moving to hide behind his back. Before I could decide if that was specious towards Upgrade or not, Sam sighed. When I looked at him, his mind clearly wasn't on the movie. I nudged him until he looked at me. "You okay?" I asked, slightly concerned. "I just want to go on the next mission. Feels like we should be doing something right now," he admitted. The mood lowered. In truth, I think we all felt that way. Like we were just forcing things. "We'll go soon," Steve said, putting a hand to Sam's shoulder. Bucky frowned at that, but didn't speak. "We're just waiting for Hill to finish the interrogations. In the meantime, we need to take our chance to breathe. Too much time on the front lines will wear anyone down, you know it as well as we do, Sam." "I wonder how those interrogations are going anyways," Creel said idly. "Probably great," Tony said with a smirk. "I heard she's threatening to sick Upgrade on the centipede soldiers." "Seriously?" I asked incredulously. "Well, the ones who weren't being given incentive," Tony said with disgust. "Apparently the chick you cured is screaming about how you stole her powers." I had no idea what to think of that. I thought I'd been doing a kindness considering how destroyed her metabolism had been. Steve sighed, reaching for the remote and pausing the movie. "We probably weren't going to focus on the movie anyway. Hill says that she's working to find the people who are being held hostage, but it'll take some time." Steve shook his head, a deep sadness in his eyes. "Still no word on Sharon, Tripp, and Jennifer, though." Well, with that, the mood is officially ruined, Clint mumbled, though he seemed as dismayed as the rest of us. Sam gave Clint a look, shrugging. Sorry, Clint. What, for ruining a party? Tony asked sarcastically, grabbing a package of Oreos and taking a stack of them out. Turning us all into angst-ridden teenagers? Tony, Steve said, glaring at him. Sam's right. We're trying, but I think we all know Hydra is on our minds. Hey, I'm just saying, Tony replied. Could have spent a bit of time talking about how there are apparently alien Frankensteins out there in the universe. Instead, we're talking about Hydra again. I'm seriously getting tired of those guys dominating my thought processes these days. Could be making more cool toys with those brain cells. In his defense, Tony was right. Ever since the Triskelion, pretty much every conversation I'd been in came back to Hydra at some point. Seriously, I was pretty sure the Avengers ended up fighting other bad guys. Where were Ultron, Galactus? Actually, thinking about the last one, I felt a bit of relief in retrospect. I didn't want to even see Galactus without at least Atomix helping me. That's the way war is, Steve said with the wise and sad voice of experience. Hydra is always going to be in the back of our minds. Tony didn't seem satisfied with that. I don't think any of us were. Well, on that depressing note, I said with a sigh, rising off the floor, I gotta meet Sky. You guys can hang out here. Just please clean up when you finish. I directed the last bit more at Sam and Steve, the ones I actually trusted to do it. Sky, huh? Tony said with a glimmer in his eyes I didn't like. I decided to ignore him, said my goodbyes, and walked out to head to the elevator. It didn't take long to get to the Claytronics lab from there. Inside, I found Fitzsimmons and Bruce were there working already. As soon as I stepped in, Fitzsimmons were on me. We heard you met Dr. Foster, Simmons said excitedly. What was he like? Fitz added with equal amounts of enthusiasm. Did he talk about working with Dr. Payne? Did he say he'll help us make Payne particles? Can you imagine the implications? Simmons asked Fitz, looking positively giddy. God, yes, Fitz said with a sigh. Being able to make any material you need giant-sized, creating full-sized machinery, then shrinking them to a nanomolecular level, Simmons continued. Nanosurgery, super-precise manufacturing, scientific study on a molecular level, Fitz replied. Seeing that I was no longer necessary for their conversation, I stepped around them to walk towards Bruce, who was working on his own project now. Any luck? I asked him as he worked at a computer. He shook his head, taking his glasses off to rub at his eyes. Not so far. I really thought this was worth a shot, but something keeps blocking me. I grunted in acknowledgement. Since finding out gamma-enhanced beings were being created and used, Bruce had started using a method he developed with Tony during the hunt for Loki to try and track gamma radiation activity that could match what Hydra was doing. But apparently, Hydra had planned ahead for that. Hey, Mahmoud, I turned to see Sky walk in, grinning at me. I smiled back. You ready? Yep, I said with a grin. We just need a blood sample. I turned to where Simmons and Fitz were still getting hyped for Payne particles. Simmons? Simmons turned to look at me, then smiled at the sight of Sky. Hey, Sky? Hey, guys, Sky said with a returning grin. Mahmoud says I need to give a blood sample. Oh, it's to make sure no one else can use whatever armor you get, Fitz said, the two British genius walking over to the Claytronics nanoforge, newly named after Tony cracked one too many jokes about the other name. Simmons went over to her station, which was a lot cleaner than mine. In my defense, Jury Rig was very untidy, in the sort of organized chaos kind of way where he knew where everything was, even if no one else could figure it out. Simmons pulled out a syringe and turned. Actually, Bruce interrupted, walking towards her. I'm going to get a set for myself as well. We all stopped to stare at him. Bruce blinked, blushing slightly. You want armor? Sky asked, looking much like I felt. I mean, the Hulk in Iron Man armor is kind of overkill, I finished. And I'm saying that. But hell, I'm down to do it. Bruce chuckled. No, I just want to have something that will change with me. Something tough enough to take some hits. That way I can stop spending so much on extra pants. No extra bells and whistles? Fitz asked, sounding excited. We can give you the sword we gave Mahmoud and Isabel. A sword? Sky asked me. Isn't that a bit redundant? Right up until I cut Wendigo's arm off, I said in reply, crossing my arms. It was honestly one of my proudest moments. Granted, it had been scary as fuck at the time, but taking on a giant monster with a suit of power armor was still a cool moment for me. And Fitz has a point, Bruce. Having some weapons for Hulk in an emergency would be good, and it's worked before. Bruce, one of the few people who knew I had some knowledge of alternate universes, seemed thoughtful. Sky turned to me. So what about me? Do I get an Iron Man armor? As soon as we get your blood work in, I said simply, looking Sky up and down. Sky was one of a few people I interacted with who didn't have a comic book counterpart, most of whom were in Coulson's team. I didn't remember anyone named Sky, no last name in the comics. What were you looking for, anyway? Something like what Pepper got? Yeah, basically Sky watched as Simmons pulled out a blood sample from her arm, wincing a bit. Just flying would be cool. I always wanted superpowers, you know? I felt the same way. Having the Omnitrix was a dream come true, really, even though I was nowhere close to unlocking its real potential yet. Flying at sonic speeds with Astrodactyl, running through New York like the Flash with Fast Track, brawling with the power of Wrath or Four Arms, feeling power run through me as Frankenstrike, feeling the world as Wild Mott and Blistwolfer, or the brilliance of Jury Rig, and the feel of merging with Tech as Upgrade. I'd often dreamed of having just one of those powers. Now that I had them all, I really felt like giving people some portion of them would be awesome. Okay, let's look at your blood in the new genetic sequencer, Simmons said, putting Sky's blood inside before going to Bruce. I went over to the machine myself, curious. Sky walked over as well. The machine was basically a microwave with a computer screen on top. Mostly because Jury Rig had made it out of a microwave, a computer screen, and Fitz's smartphone. Still can't believe you stole my phone and broke it, Fitz said sourly, glaring at me. I winced. Sorry, Jury Rig just kinda got in the zone. Besides, we got the genetic sanguine sequencer out of it, even if the name Jury Rig insisted on was kinda dumb. Sanguine, really? Plus, Simmons apparently hated the name for its inaccuracy. Fitz glared at me harder in the memory of his phone. I focused very hard on the computer screen. What does this thing do anyway? Sky asked me. Well, all sorts of things, really. But it's going to be the only one of its kind for a while. Since Sky's DNA was taking a while to be read, I switched the screen over to some of the stored data. I made it to be able to read and interpret the genes and such of people. I'm not much of a scientist, sadly, so I can only really give layman's terms about what it does. Sorry in advance for how dumbed down this is going to sound to you guys, I said to Bruce and Simmons. Oh, don't worry, Simmons said, giving me a smile as she took Bruce's blood. I don't expect you to know anything. When I gave her a look, she seemed to realize what she had said and became very flustered. I didn't mean... I get it, I said, sighing a bit. Real tough being the dumb one in the room when not in alien form. Can't wait to unlock grey matter or brainstorm. Anyways, basically it reads DNA, like I said. This is Tony's. I showed the swirling pillar of sequences to Sky, who at least feigned interest. And here's how it compares to Steve's. Sky blinked, noticing what I did. The sequencer flashed at the differences in Tony and Steve's DNA. The super soldier serum had made a whole lot of things more refined in Steve's DNA. I could barely understand the differences and what they meant, but they were what made him a super badass patriot. Then I showed mine, and Sky looked up at me. Why is your DNA changed too? I pointed at the Omnitrix. It's bonded to my DNA. Anyone trying to steal the Omnitrix without knowing how my baby works will get nothing but trouble. Sky's DNA was still being read. I took the sample of Bruce's blood from Simmons and put it in the machine. When I tapped at the screen, one of Jury Rig's programs activated. Oh, come on, I grunted in annoyance. Instead of DNA, footage from Godzilla vs. Megalon popped up. I slapped the machine as Sky gave me an amused look, at which point a panel rose up and slapped me right back in the face. Of course, Jury Rig would make that a feature. I mentally grumbled as I nursed my nose and pride as Sky tried hard to suppress her laughter. To little success based off her growing laughter. "Ha!" Bruce said as Godzilla slid on his tail to slam his feet into Megalon, while Jet Jaguar held the monster in place. "That's not really plausible." "Yeah, well, that's the magic of Godzilla in the Showa era of movies. Less about reality, more about fun." I looked up at the group. "Simmons, Fitz, can you guys—" "Yes, let me." Fitz stepped forward and started to type at the screen as giant monsters continued to fight. He somehow turned it off, then activated the program again, bringing up Bruce's DNA. "Okay, Simmons." "Yes, right there." The redhead pointed at the DNA. "Is that the gamma gene or some evidence of the Hulk?" "I have no idea," Bruce admitted. "I'd need to find someone with the gene who isn't already enhanced." "Well, Sky's DNA is next, and it's—" I stopped, staring at her DNA. "God damn it." Sky stared at me, surprised. What's wrong?" I sighed. "I'm just tired of surprises, Sky." I pointed at the screen, rubbing my eyes. "Your DNA is human, but only about 99.8%. The rest is something new." "The gamma gene?" Simmons asked, sounding fascinated.
Or maybe from when we injected her with the GH325 formula.
Fitz continued. Sky looked a little freaked out at this point. "Guys, what does this mean?" I kept rubbing my eyes, feeling a little overwhelmed. Kidnapped allies, graveyard refugees, gamma-enhanced beings, cyborgs, a quantum-powered assassin, and now a friend with clearly modified DNA. This was getting exhausting. There were so many balls up in the air for me now, and the worst part was, I knew it was selfish to think that way. Sky was giving me a hurt look, clearly pained at the idea that I was treating her like a problem. "You should be good," I said with a smile. "Just in case, Omnitrix, can you detect any damage to Sky's genetics?" "Sky's DNA is undamaged," the Omnitrix said in my voice after a quick scan. "Then what's wrong with me?" Sky said, sounding shaky. Bruce stepped into her line of sight, getting her attention. "Don't worry," the older man said. "We'll figure it out. We've got enough geniuses in this building to find out what's happening, okay?" His smile was gentle. "Believe me, I know what you're feeling, at least on some level." Sky didn't seem calmer, and I only frowned. "What was it?" "The gamma gene. Was she part alien, or even just a latent superhuman like the Inhumans, X-Men, or even some sort of magically enhanced person?" "Fuck it," I said simply, shutting down the machine. "Mahmoud?" Sky asked me, confused. I glared around. "I promised armor. I'm making armor." "I think we have bigger issues," Simmons said gently. "We'll always have bigger issues," I said as firmly as I could. "There'll always be another bad guy, another superhero, another assassin, another world-ending or controlling threat, more of us getting hurt, more of us finding some deep, dark secrets we didn't even know about ourselves at times." I looked around. "Who cares? I want to make power armor for my friend so we can go flying together. I'm going to focus on that now. Sky, you want to choose the color?" Sky looked at me. When she spoke, it sounded a little forced. "Well, I do like pink and orange, but those wouldn't be good colors." "Yeah, a little forced, but I'd go with it." I went to the Claytronics Nanoforge and started moving the display around. "Yeah, you'd end up looking like a Power Ranger with either of those. Not saying Power Rangers aren't awesome, but..." Simmons, Fitz, and Bruce gave Sky and I a look as I forcibly ignored the issue of Sky's DNA. "I'll run tests," Simmons said, giving Sky a worried look. "I'll have to inform the director." Sky frowned. "Yeah, okay." Simmons gave her an apologetic smile. Going to the machine, she hesitated. "Dark blue was always a good color for you." Sky looked up at Simmons, giving her a smile and nodding. "Yeah, I think that would be good. Mahmoud?" "Dark blue," I nodded, tapping at the controls and shifting the color screen. "The design will be similar to the Iron Legion and Pepper's armor, with the defenses and such. Any extras?" As Sky moved up to choose her armor, I tried to focus on her. It was oddly easy for me. Still, Sky's odd DNA was exactly why I would never mass-produce or improve on the genetic sequencer. A machine that could read DNA, find what was superior, what was different or strange. Yeah, knowing the Marvel Universe, that was something I didn't want getting into the wrong hands. People would either become Magneto or Trask, using the thing to decide who was and wasn't human when the difference was negligible. Screw that. Being human wasn't the difference. Being sentient, being capable of giving a damn for others regardless of race or origin, that was what mattered. Asmith made the Omnitrix to be the best tool for ambassadors, to allow someone to walk in another species' shoes alongside its other functions. If I had to use it to represent and protect humans, super soldiers, gamma-enhanced cyborgs, metahumans, and people like Skye, then I'd do it alongside all the aliens. I pushed aside those melodramatic thoughts and focused once more on making power armor for Skye. Just be careful with it, I said to her, as we worked. No fighting unless necessary. Got it? She confirmed. January 19th, the day after finding out about Skye's DNA, we caught a break in the hunt. The facility is the last place we managed to track all the communications to, Hill said from across the hologram of the facility in question. In the main gathering room for our forces in the Enterprise were 3 groups. One was the Avengers, all of the original founders in the center, with Steve closest to Hill. The second was us reserve Avengers, Sam standing behind Steve, me next to Rhodey. The third group was a mixture of new and old, joined by someone I was kinda giddy, terrified to see. Frank Castle, the Punisher himself, was in the center of Bridges' new elite unit, looking like he didn't know what to think, but still being professional as possible. He wasn't as massively muscled as I was used to, and he was only wearing the Bridge casual uniform of a blue sweater, but it was the Punisher, before his wife and kids were killed, which I was damn well going to keep from happening. He was sitting on a metal folding chair with the other elites, all of them watching Maria give the briefing. Coulson and his people were there as well, Coulson looking pissed. As far as we can tell, this place was a decommissioned Air Force base, with no relation to Hydra until recently. They've been using it to land their ships and refuel them. Davita's girls managed to get a photo of it to us, and our people discovered their location. I'm sending 2 members of the Avengers and Reserve Avengers there. Only 2, ma'am, one of the bridge soldiers next to Frank asked, a guy by the name of Gunter. 4, technically, Maria corrected, Dial, Hulk, Iron Man, and War Machine. The 4 of us stepped forward. Another group will be here, Maria waved at the hologram, which changed to show somewhere pretty familiar to me. After all, I'd been living there before showing up in New York. Portland, a woman by the name of Audrey Nathan, a Celestin, is at risk of attack. We believe one of the prisoners Hydra captured is going to attack or kidnap her. Tony stared at her, shocked, then looked at Coulson. Coulson nodded, his eyes hard. Tony, I'd never seen him be truly angry. But he looked it then. We'll be sending. Maria, Tony interrupted. I'd like to go on that second mission if it's all right. Tony was being polite, not a hint of snark, 100% serious. Maria, after a moment of staring at him, panned her eyes to Coulson. He nodded, and Maria looked back at Tony. Okay, Nomad, Bucky stepped forward. You'll join the attack on the facility. He didn't seem to mind, only looking over to nod at the rest of us. As for Portland, I'm sending in heavy forces. Audrey Nathan will most likely be attacked by one Marcus Daniels, aka Blackout, a man who has the ability to use what we call Dark Force to absorb energy and attack others. He is one of the many prisoners broken out of the fridge and most likely recruited by Hydra. As he is a confirmed enhanced with the possibility of other forces aiding him, I won't be taking any chances. I want Audrey safe, and I want him taking down hard. Maria's eyes panned across the room. Falcon, Black Widow, Punisher, Sam, Natasha, and Frank looked up. You'll defend the perimeter with your teams while Coulson, Captain America, and Iron Man meet Ms. Nathan and bring her in. Pa Coulson paled at that. You have your assignments. Move out. Later, Bruce, Tony, Skye, and I met up with Coulson on the bus in his office, where he was preparing his team. You going to be okay? Skye asked Coulson. Coulson only gave her a look. That bad, huh? She asked quietly. Well, he did break up with her via death, Tony said unhelpfully. Tony, Bruce shouted, shocked. Coulson seemed legitimately hurt. He sighed, sitting down in his chair. I didn't want to see her again like this, with Daniels attacking again. Well, we'll keep her safe, Tony said, his eyes hard. I've got something to bring him down. And if anyone else tries to back him up, we'll take them down too. As Coulson seemed to relax at that, I realized once again that Tony and Coulson had a really complicated relationship. Well, we'll finish up as soon as we can, Bruce said, his eyes flashing green. Maria thinks Daniels or the base will have information on where Jennifer is. And Sharon and Trip too, he said quickly. It was clear where his thoughts lay, though. We'll stomp the base out, then come to you if you need us. We won't, Tony's eyes were flinty. Believe me. Yeah. Tony was a scary fucker when he wanted to be. In the meantime, Sky, I said to her, I know you have your armor now, but don't use it in combat unless necessary. We don't know what sort of effect Dark Force will have on arc reactors and quantum batteries. Sky snorted. Yeah, fine. No using my cool new armor to fight bad guys, she said, feigning disappointment. I frowned. Sky, seriously, I'm not just saying it to be careful. We can't make any assumptions. She looked at me, glaring. I'm not an idiot, murmured. I'm not just going to run in and fight. I know that, Sky. I just what? Think I'm going to rush in like a moron? She crossed her arms. Sky, I just don't want you to rush in and get hurt. Yeah, you keep saying that. You know, I handled myself pretty well before you showed up to nag me about something I already know not to do.
What the hell did I do wrong?
For some reason, I felt like the older guys in the room were amused. Sky, I know you're smart. She turned and stormed out, leaving me with my mouth gaped. What the hell just happened? You made it seem like you didn't trust her to be smart or capable at her job, Coulson said simply. What? I just meant I wanted her to be. I frowned, trying to figure out where I went wrong. I feel like I was being reasonable. You were, Tony said, but then you piled on. That's around the 6th time today you've told her to be careful. Damn it, really? I didn't even notice. Left feeling a bit off, I finally turned to Bruce. Hey, you made a mistake. You just need to apologize, Bruce said with his hands raised to say this wasn't his problem. Nope, I'm just going to ignore it and go fight Hydra. 4 arms time, baby.